Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the TheP-LotPodcast, where our ratings never decline, unlike the National Basketball Association.
Yeah.
John here, joined once again by the main man himself, Michael. Michael, you look a little cold right now, pal.
Now
How's it
listen,
going over in Huntington Valley?
if you're in the local area watching, you got snow on the ground last night, and it is a ripe 28 degrees outside. The wind is whistling every now and again. There's snow covering every inch of grass and all over the trees. It's. I was outside last night, brushing off my family's cars that would need it today, so it wasn't as bad. And it was one of that snow where it's like that fluffy, like big flakes that when it lands on the trees, it looks like you're looking into like a movie. Like it almost does. It didn't look real how like perfect everything was kind of aligning. It was nice, but yes, that does mean it is quite cold outside, and in turn my room that I do think is a little poorly insulated. Over the years, I think I've grown to understand that. Very hot in the summer, nice and cool in the winter, and today's one of those days. So
So, Michael, we got a lot to talk about today.
yeah,
Quick hitters, I would say bowl season. I would say
the college football playoff, man.
pretty
That's a
pretty entertaining.
it's a
So,
great weekend of football that we'll have to talk about, at least the
yes,
professional level. Starting off, I guess we started with Thursday. So you had Thursday, Broncos, Chargers, into last night's Indiana, Notre Dame. And then you have the rest of the college football playoffs first round with SMU, Penn State at noon, Clemson, Texas at 4, and Tennessee, Ohio State at 8. And slammed in the middle of that is the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Baltimore Ravens at 1 o'clock today, and the Houston Texans at the Kansas City Chiefs. Right, that game's in Kansas City.
right. That actually is
Um,
at 1 o'clock. The Steelers games is at 4:30.
oh, Steelers games before. Excuse me. So those two games are happening today because all four of those teams will play again on
When's the last
Christmas
time the Steelers and the Penn State Nittany Lions both played
on the same day. That's
on the
quite a
same day?
it's quite a thought. I venture to almost say never. Honestly, that's really something. But yeah, great day of football, and then obviously a full slate on tomorrow, Sunday. But yeah, so far so good. I'm excited for the rest of the college football playoff. Hopefully, better games than what there was last night because it's just going to open up the door of not letting these smaller schools in, or not smaller schools, but you know, factoring more in the resume. And should you just give it to a team like Alabama because they'll play a better game, even though they have two bad losses on their, the whole nine. So hopefully we get some better games today. I'm excited. I'm very excited that it's freezing and snow on the ground, so it is very, very acceptable to stay in the house all day and watch sports. So yeah.
Yeah, man. This is exciting time of the year. We'll just just kind of our first quick hitter. Flyers like roster incompetence. So the player that I thought really broke out in the preseason for the Flyers was Emil Andre, and when he was called
It
up last month,
translated.
he played really well. And it's like Flyers are rebuilding; they're not serious about contending. So if you're not interested in bringing veterans, what's the other way for you to bring in new talent? Through your farm system. Well, they sent down Emil Andre because of their goalie mess, and because they're going to carry three goalies on the roster: Kolosov, Erson, and
And Fedotov.
Fedotov.
Yeah, it's a bit asinine that Emil Andre is the one that gets the bullet. And I think what's so frustrating about it, it's that I really do think this is a torts thing. What he believes is right, because he's been scratched for about the last week or so before Thursday's game against the Los Angeles Kings, which was a very poor defensive performance. And like he didn't play amazing. But like, I don't know. You're 12-8-4 when he's in the lineup, and you're like 3-9-2 when he's not in the lineup. And he was playing. I thought he was playing still pretty well. Tortorella thought he'd been playing poorly for the better part of like a week, and that's why he scratched him when some defensemen got healthy, and then he puts him in the lineup for a game, not his best game, and now he's back in Lehigh Valley. And I don't know. It's just frustrating.
Very Bryson Stott rookie year ish.
It's just yeah, and that's kind of how all these sort of young players have been going for the Flyers. You know, Tortorella shakes up the lines all the time. I'm not saying Frost is the answer to be the center next to Michka, but when your coach is talking about it, like, no, we've tried that, doesn't work. He has no chance to do it. We need to find another option. And like, I just, those are conversations you can have inside the building. Upstairs with Danny, but I don't think you need to be saying that to the media. It may be is my generation just so soft or whatever, but I just think he's a total ass, and I, I don't think it helps the players. I really don't. I think that there's very limited type of players that respond super well to what he does in today's day and age, and I don't think the Flyers have a large majority of that on their roster at the moment. And what I think the result of that is you get a lot of young players that don't feel comfortable, that play scared, that play tight, and thus make more mistakes. And it combats and, it snowballs, if you will, into just poor play and not reaching what you're supposed to be reaching and what we hope these players reach. And when you send down players like Emil Andre, it's like you're not very serious about winning. Not that I need this team to make the playoffs or whatever, but he's been your best defenseman pretty objectively. It's not even just Flyers fans. It's, people across NHL like spaces, NHL Twitter, NHL like analytics departments on Twitter world and TV voices and stuff. They all view that all the metrics point to Emil Andre being your best defenseman this year, and you're sending him back to the Phantoms. I don't get it.
From the Flyers said it was because of a forward issue. They needed another forward because of their.
He's not the guy. Zamula, send down Zamula. Like Zamula's a very bad hockey
He
player,
speaks Russian.
and there's your problem. Hire a full-time translator, not just the guy to come around sometimes. Make
So
him
if Neil
full-time.
Andre learns Russian, he would be on the team right now.
Dude, like probably, I guess, and that's just ridiculous. I mean, there's so many ways to circumvent that, and the Flyers do all zero of them. Unreal.
Yeah, go to the game today. Was kind of excited
Oh,
to watch Emil Andre, and now it's like,
you are going to the game today?
yes,
Well,
going
that's
to the game
fun.
today. Yeah,
Enjoy.
it's just so
It's
annoying.
fun to watch Michkov in person, I will say.
Really annoying that
Yeah.
yeah, it's so dumb to me. It's like, dude, imagine if I don't know, like the tanking Astros sent down like George Springer for no reason.
It's
Like
just it
it's
doesn't
just so, or like I don't know, like
it's hard to translate it to other sports as much. But like baseball's probably the closest thing you can do. It would have been like I don't know. If Bohm came, it would have been like sending down Reese Hoskins in 2018 if like his first full season.
what?
If
Oh,
he
you mean
had
like when
like
he's
a
playing him left field, and he's committing errors.
right, like when Reese came up in 2017 and he played the last like 2 months of the season and was like, oh my God. And then he came up in 2018 for a full year in left field. And like if he was making errors and wasn't, the fact of the matter is, I can't even explain it in a way where, oh, Reese was playing poorly and they just gave up on him because Andre just hasn't really been playing poorly. He's had like a couple rough games and he's just gone. So like it'd be like if he was bad defensively, but he was still hitting fairly well, went like 0 for 12 in a series, and they were like, all right, let's send him to Lehigh Valley. And it would have made no sense. Um, but alas, this is what we have with Philadelphia Flyers at the moment. It just seems like I I don't know what the front office keeps talking about the rebuild, the rebuild, the rebuild. But I think you need to kind of start actually making moves. Like the only player that you traded that was legitimately difficult to trade was Claude Giroux a few years ago. And even then, that wasn't that hard because he had such a huge market. But, trading Sean Walker for a first round pick at the trade deadline is really, that's the easiest slam dunk trade you could have made. But it's when it comes to trading guys like Scott Lawton, and I'm not saying dump him just to get him off the team, but like being creative, like we talk about creative moves, being creative to go get a guy that's younger that maybe you can fix and make a very viable piece for the future because Scott Lawton's not getting any younger nor getting any better. And he's a solid
Yeah, but how
player
are
for
you
what he
supposed
is.
to like do that if I mean, this is just my take on Torts, and I don't think you're soft for criticizing someone who hasn't
He's
been
just like,
close to winning a Stanley Cup in 20 years.
and it's like he's just rude. Like, I
Well,
don't
I
know.
mean, like,
He
well,
seems
yeah.
rude.
I mean, even the fact he's like, old man. When I think I typed in the chat, "Old man yells at cloud." Like that's pretty
Yes.
much. He's old and crabby. Like, okay, like that's whatever. But like, my thing is like, dude, when you're a coach, I think we're like now when we see good coaches, it's like, okay, Emil's struggling. Like, what am I doing to not put it? Why is he making these mistakes? What
How
do I
can I
need to
put him in a
do?
better situation to succeed? How
What
can
do
I
I need
make
to
things?
do? Now, if he's just like completely blowing his assignments, you gotta be like, dude, like, I'm just gonna sit you for a game because we're gonna watch the
Yes.
tape, we're gonna watch the video, we're gonna see what you did, and then we're gonna correct it in practice. But I want you to
Yes.
sit so you can just take a break, see Nick Sealer, or point to a veteran. Like, I want you to watch him.
Yeah,
Will help
watch
you.
him here, watch Reese, whatever. And it's like
And I
you're
don't think he does
totally
that. I
right.
think he's just like
No.
he's running his team like he's got like the 2006 like Detroit Red Wings where he can't afford to sit a young guy down or a couple,
Yes. We're
because
like,
he has 8 all-stars on his team. He doesn't have that here. You have to adjust what you're doing.
yeah, and it's very, very frustrating. You're totally right. You got to have that emotional intelligence, they call it, to be able to kind of connect with your players. You see, the good teams, whether in the
Well,
city or other
yeah.
cities,
Well, the
they can
issue
handle
was
it.
I think that Michael Eddie does this is because think about it. He was hired back in 2022 when the Flyers basically hit or were at rock bottom, right?
Right.
For the most part, he wasn't brought in here to win games. That's
No,
the
he
issue.
was brought in here to get guys right, and I just think his philosophy of getting guys right is dated and doesn't work.
I'll say this: the next coach of the Philadelphia Flyers will legitimately might have like the easiest job in
Yeah,
terms of
just
like
just to
winning
not.
over the players because he's just not Torts.
Yeah,
Like when the Phillies hired Charlie Manuel after they fired Larry Boa,
yeah,
the team immediately loved him, partially because of his like personality, because he's a former player, you know. But he just wasn't Larry Boa. That
yeah,
was it. He
yeah,
just wasn't Larry Boa. So he
yeah.
immediately got the respect of all of his players right off the rip. So anyway, moving on. Speaking of the Phillies, uh, so yeah, Michael, the Phillies finally made a move. They signed former Twins outfielder. Came out of, pardon the pun, kind of came out of left field when that happened. Max Kepler.
Which is par for the course. I mean, we talked about it. I think last episode, 2 episodes ago, is that whatever the Phillies' next move is, we're not going to see it coming because they're airtight. We didn't see the Romano move coming. We didn't see the Merrifield move, all these sort of things. Regardless, it's very, very on brand for the Phillies. This kind of move. It's almost like the Jordan Romano signing in a position player, like a guy that from 2019 to 2023 is like top like 20 or 25 in baseball and like on base percentage, or top 30, something like that. Like he just simply a really good approach guy for the bulk of his career. And for whatever reason last year, like that totally fell off a cliff. He started chasing more, his walk rate plummeted, his strikeout rate went through the roof. I don't really know what happened at all last year for that to occur. I'm sure the Phillies think that they can get him back to what he was previous. Um, but like you're seeing the Twitter fans that are like, "Oh, just another free swinger," and it's like in 2024, like yes, he was not good and was a free swinger, but everything else about this guy from the rest of his tenure in Major League Baseball was a guy that was very selective, very patient, and worked a lot of counts and worked a lot of walks. So I do think that's a nice, useful piece to have. It feels like, though, from what we're hearing after the fact, that Max Kepler is going to be the everyday left fielder, which make of that what we will. I don't know how much we're going to love just having another left handed bat that isn't Juan Soto caliber, obviously, in the lineup. I thought that move would come with a righty platoon bat, and perhaps maybe it will. Perhaps maybe it's not totally through. But in terms of seemingly major moves, feels like the Phillies are done based on all the reports. They tried
Yeah,
to trade
this
Bohm. It was just, you know,
yeah, this really doesn't make any sense from a lineup perspective because I think, like you said, like the Phillies should only bring in Soto because he's just a generational bat, and the whole left-handed issue isn't a problem because he's a generational bat. Like
yeah, it doesn't matter. But
you'll just
like,
limit it. This does not make any sense. This signing to me for a couple of reasons. One, he's a lefty bat. We needed a righty bat. We see basically how this team just cannot hit any lefty. Like the joke is like you could call up like a bum basically. That sounds mean. Like you could basically call up like basically the pitching equivalent to the Phillies had in Michael Mercado, but if he's left-handed against the Phillies, he's going to go 6 innings with 10 Ks.
yeah, they. I don't know. Like, I actually don't hate the move. It's been pretty polarizing on Twitter, and I think it's been super polarizing just
Well, I
because.
think the Jordan Romano signing is way better than this signing, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I
Way
think
better.
yeah, and I think the expectations, um,
Like Jordan
for
Romano
what
at
people.
times has been elite in his career. At
Yeah,
no point in Max Kepler's career he was anything close to just being unless he was above average. His highest
no,
wins above replacement in a season is 3.9, and that was back in 2019. Like Michael, people were showing highlights, like the Phillies blogs, highlights of his with CC Sabathia pitching. Man, are you kidding me?
no,
Like, come on, like, come on, bro.
no, I hear you. I hear you. And listen, you know, you're giving him $10 million. You're not. He's not a guy that's going to be this
Yeah,
huge needle
$10 million in
mover.
today's baseball economy is the equivalent of like 15, 20 years ago giving a guy 1 year
Yeah,
$4.5 million.
it's very very
It's a lot of the old heads
small.
complaining. That's pretty much what this is. You
Yeah,
know,
and it'll be it'll be interesting to see. I mean, obviously the offseason's not over. Even if the reports say that they're like done, I guess we'll see. They're gonna have to. I think there's still little fill outs to be made here and there. They're still looking for like a back end rotation piece. Um, they're saying like the lineup is done. Don't
why don't you
love
just pitch
that
Taiwan for the until Andy Painter's ready?
because Taiwan's really bad, like really really bad. Like it's so much worse than whatever you could probably get. Like genuinely.
You know,
Um,
I can we talk about? We'll just because we got a lot to talk about today. I don't speed it up, but like, can we just talk about? You brought up like lack of creativity with the Flyers. Michael, not for anything. I think when you look at the hands each of these two individuals were dealt, Danny Briere was dealt like the worst hand humanly possible. And listen, besides like the head coach being a crabby old guy, I think he's doing a decent enough job where he's probably going to get a first round pick for Ristolainen as we get closer to the NHL
if
trade
they trade
deadline.
him, we'll see.
I think he's getting traded. Like they would love.
I'd like to hope so. Like this is the whole point. You know, you built up his trade value to now get a first. So like do it. Don't think this is a valuable piece for our team. Like
No.
Be smart. But anyways, I don't think you're wrong. I think there were a lot of moves that have taken place that you absolutely could have got creative and got involved with. Like the Cubs were swapping people all over the place. They got Kyle Tucker. They sent Bellinger to the Yankees for quite literally like the equivalent of the Phillies making that move would have been trading Jose Ruiz if Jose Ruiz was not as good as he is. Like a worse version of Jose Ruiz is what the Yankees traded to go get Cody Bellinger. And I'm not saying they should have got Cody Bellinger. That's a big con. All that sort of stuff. I'm not saying they should have
I
done
think I
that.
would have rather have Cody Bellinger than Max Kepler.
It's just that's a big price tag. And I think that we're kind of getting to the point here that the Phillies aren't
Well,
willing to spend as much as we thought they were. And
well,
that's a shame. He makes
yeah,
$27 million
because
dollars.
what I read was because of the luxury tax that Kepler is basically 1 year, $19.5 million.
Right. So they didn't want to go get Bellinger and make that
And
40 or
And
whatever
the
it is.
Cubs just didn't want to retain any of the salary. That's why they
No,
got
because the Cubs are like Pirates Chicago. Like the Cubs are the same as the Pirates. They just have more,
money.
vibes. Yeah. But they don't use that money. They have it, they don't use it. Um, Regardless of all of this, the Phillies, like for example, in that Yankees trade for Bellinger, they could have gotten involved and make a call about Seiya Suzuki. Get involved that way. Like make
Well,
yourself a
I'm pretty
three-team
sure after
trade.
them unloading Bellinger, they were never. I think they were either going to have to choose between Seiya Suzuki and Bellinger after acquiring Kyle Tucker, which really doesn't make sense for them to acquire Kyle Tucker, in my opinion,
Well,
because
they're
he's going to
doing
be a
it. This
free
is
agent.
it doesn't make sense because they have no intention on signing him. It makes sense from the perspective of Cubs ownership wants to pretend to their fans that they care. That's what that is. It's like, oh look, we got Kyle Tucker and we tried to keep him, but he left. And
Then,
it's like,
well, then I'd rather just the guy. I forget the name of the prospect, Cam Smith, who
yeah.
was really Florida State player. Florida
John,
State
they don't care, man. The
doesn't
Cubs
make
do
any
not
sense.
care.
It
They
makes
got their
no
World
sense.
Series and they are fine. And that was quite some time ago,
Like
but
Cam Smith is closer to the major leagues right now than Aiden Miller, and I love Aiden Miller. It's just that like being realistic here, like
yeah, no, listen. But I just think the Cubs were a team that were willing to make moves and shake things up, and you could have maybe convinced them that like, you just trade away Paredes. Why don't you offer Alec Bohm? Maybe Bohm. They could have wanted Bohm
oh,
as a
like a
guy.
Bohm
Maybe
for Paredes just swap.
no, not Bohm for Paredes, but like Paredes was already gone, so it's like maybe you
Oh,
Bohm and you get Suzuki back. You dangle Bohm and Castellanos to the Cubs because he was a Cub, Castellanos, a beloved Cub in his short stint there. He was great. Like it's point being, like you said, the creativity, lack thereof, is that you're just like, all right, Bohm Castellanos for Kyle Tucker. What do you think? And the Astros are like, go F yourself, hang up the phone. Mason Miller, is he available? Well, what are you offering? Well, we're thinking about Alec Bohm hanging up the phone. It's like you were like throwing Bohm around to try to rip someone off instead of actually earnestly offering him around for something that's of equal or lesser
maybe
value
if you're
even.
that hell bent on trading Bohm, maybe you should have benched him in the playoffs.
That's what I'm saying. You didn't do yourselves any favor with his value by benching him in the playoffs,
Or
by,
have someone leak to
you know,
AJ Pierzynski of all
that you're
people.
dying to get rid of him and you're frustrated with his kid mentality. Like it's just you didn't do yourself any favors
By
in
the way,
that way.
AJ Pierzynski voted once the most hated man in Major League Baseball. Yeah,
I
that
did not
guy.
know that.
That's the guy
That's
you
pretty funny.
choose to friggin'
Let
leak
things
info
out too.
to.
Yeah. So, you know, for better for worse, the Phillies are going to be.
Well, Michael, you're now learning what I've experienced for most of my life is when the Eagles do things very well and when the Phillies start making mistakes, the mistakes look way bigger because you're like, why can't they just do what the Eagles do in terms of like how they run their team? It's been happening
Yeah.
for like literally the last 3 decades now.
Yeah. And the John Stolen's tweet is the things. It was a good tweet to kind of summarize what the Phillies offseason is and where apparently we as fans went wrong with our expectations of what they were willing to
Oh, I
do. And
love
it's
when the media people like to tell us like that we're idiots and
well, I don't think I don't think he was telling us that we're an idiot. I just think he was putting it in a little summary of like this is what the Phillies offseason plans kind of were and what they were. And we as fans, we thought they were going to do more because they kind of told us that, like, with all the information that came out, it seemed like they were going to be a little more involved in making something different. They don't have as much money to spend as we thought. They don't want to put another big contract together for the books, viewing 2025 as potentially a gap year. Not a gap year because it's like your team is still very good, but not putting
well,
a
let's
lot of
be. I mean,
stress
let's
on
just be. I
2025.
mean, let's just be honest though. Like, I never said the Phillies were cheap. When you have the second highest payroll in Major League Baseball, you're not cheap. The
No, of
issue
course
is,
not.
and I think this is what got Dombrowski fired partially. Grant, I thought maybe it was a little unjustified in Boston. What got him fired was he just kind of had too many bad contracts. Like Eovaldi at the time of his firing was an awful contract. Now, Eovaldi eventually bounced back and was pretty good for the Red Sox, and then he was pretty good. He was
Good for the
pretty
Rangers.
important for the Rangers in their postseason. He was a vital piece for two postseason runs for two teams, right? The Rangers and the Red Sox, right? But still, like that's not going to be Taiwan Walker. Taiwan Walker's like, I don't think Taiwan Walker's going to magically just figure it out in
No,
like 1 year.
no, and it's like for between bad contracts like that and even a bad contract like Nick Castellanos, where yes, he's been fine as a player and like on the lower end of the list of people to blame for things. What you're paying him for is not what you're getting, and that's just sometimes that adds up. And listen, this goes deeper than Dombrowski for sure because this goes within the last the decade of Philly's failure builds up to this, where if you're going to build your team through solely free agent and trade acquisitions and big contracts to players that are not
Well, they never make
homegrown,
trades. That's the thing.
well, not trades, but all their guys that they have are free agent signings. All their best players, Bryce Harper, Zach Wheeler. JT Realmuto was a trade, and then you signed him again. Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, Nick Castellanos. All of those guys were not on the Phillies way back when, once upon a time. So when you're building your team that way, and all your best players are that, and it's not just 3 or 4 of them, it's like 6, 7 of them, it gets to a point sometimes where if not all of them are exactly what you kind of expected them to be, your ceiling gets capped a little bit, especially if your homegrown guys that are not making a lot of money are not living up to the potential that you had also hoped, like Bryson Stott, like Alec Boehm. You traded for Brandon Marsh. He's a nice player. I find it hard to blame him for a lot of their problems, but Johan Rojas perhaps back. Like it's their guys that they drafted or signed internationally and molded through the minors that by the time they come up, if they're not serious contributors and you're just banking on all your big money guys, and the big money guys clearly have shown it might not totally be enough or consistent enough to put it together thus far through 3 tries, it just reaches a point where we as fans were like, all right, we have this team here. We need to get more. We need to add more to it. It's not enough. And if it's not enough, but you already have the second highest payroll in baseball, like you said, Jesus Christ, like it is hard to ask them to go throw 780 million at Juan Soto, to go throw, another, you know, 200 million at Alex Bregman. You get what I'm saying? Like it's just it really does get to a point. So to maybe get some salary relief off the books next year, not necessarily dumping all the guys that come off, but bringing them back on cheaper contracts as bridge guys until you hope your guys come up. And within the next 2 years, guys like Andrew Painter or Aiden Miller are able to come up and provide some salary relief where you can get some valuable assets that aren't going to cost you hundreds of millions of dollars in free agency. then I think you're better suited for the long term. But what you created by adding all these players at their respected ages and at these big contracts was a shorter term window that, again, you have a World Series appearance to show for it, you have an NLCS appearance to show for it, and you have a division title to show for it. Those are the only three things. Those three things aren't terrible. In the order of which they came, it feels a lot worse, but they still have a team that is capable. They do still have a team that's capable of winning the whole thing if things go their way a little bit. If their starting pitching is, good as advertised, you get the bats hot enough at the right times. It's enough. It is enough. It's just frustrating to say that when you're on year 4 of trying it. But that is baseball. Baseball, any sport is like this,
I'm gonna
truly.
say
But baseball, I think the
I'm gonna
most.
close out the Phillies like with I think our last talking point here is that you're I mean everything you just said was true. I completely agree, and I know it's
It's
kind
just
of
it's frustrating to say it, like, because it's not what we want to say.
well. I think part of the issue is I think part of it is like I don't say fan angst, but like fan concern is
Hmm.
that the last time the Phillies had a bunch of like young like guys from their farm system come up and be like Hall of Fame ish players was like Chase Utley, Jimmy Rollins. I know he's obviously not a Hall of Famer, not going to ever sniff the Hall of Fame, but Ryan
Hmm.
Howard, Cole Hamels, um, like Michael, like Aaron Nola is really like the only guy in the last like 15 years the Phillies
He
have
had Nola
made like
and
to feel like it was an
Ranger.
all-star caliber player.
Yeah,
He's also like the
Ranger.
most disliked person on the team. I feel like
Yes, because people are sick of him. Like, people are straight up sick
people
of
are
him
just because he's been
already.
around for so long.
He's been around for so long, and they're like, "Oh my god!" Like, people, he gets undervalued by the fans for sure.
But like
And
I
with
think
Ranger,
but my
they're not
point,
keeping, by the way,
Ranger,
long term.
right? They're going to trade him.
Well,
You
or
know,
or just he's just
let him
gonna walk
walk.
because Mr. Boris is his new agent, and Scott Boris is not letting him sign a discount contract to stay with the Phillies. That's for sure. So,
Yeah. But like my last point is like, man, this is going to be the most important year I think for Phillies like minor league baseball in terms of development. We're going to see because it's probably going to determine how they're going to spend their money and trying to increase their window. Because if you look at Aiden Miller, like Aiden Miller right now is one of the fastest rising prospects in baseball, like in terms of like performance on the field and in like these like Arizona Fall League, All-Star games, etc. Like he's not going to be the next Bobby Witt,
mhm.
but Michael, wouldn't it be great if he was like as good as like Austin Riley? Like you could call up like an Austin Riley level ish hitter.
What, right now?
Like next year or 2 years from now.
What,
Like,
with
wouldn't that be
Miller?
nice?
I mean, yeah, it would be great. I think
Who's
his
right-handed?
his swing reminds me of Ryan Braun a lot. Like, if you can, if you're gonna, like, that's what they're hoping for. You want to be good long term, baseball wise, and really create a window for yourself. You need to start hitting on the pre arbitration guys that don't make a lot of money, that are very very good, very very soon into their careers. And when you sign them to those long-term contracts that buy out their arbitration, it's not nearly as much as they could get when they hit, arbitration at age like 27 or 28 years old. But you did them a favor. You bought out the arbitration. You raised their level of pay early, but it's not that substantial. Like, when you want to be some really good contender, and if you don't have some, like, the Phillies are clearly willing to spend money as they have the last few years. They spent a very good
But there's
chunk
a
of
limit.
change. There is a limit. There's always going to be a limit unless you're a team potentially like the Mets or the Dodgers. And even the Yankees have shown they have a bit of a limit. And it's like, so there is a limit. There's always going to be a cap. And the way to, evade that limit is just to have the young controllable players that are really really damn good. And they haven't really had that at all yet. You got that with what, Christopher Sanchez, I guess,
Yeah,
and
and
when
by the way, this
Ranger.
whole like luxury tax and like the penalties designed to like inhibit spending, Michael, this is probably one of the dumbest things in sports because the teams that get the money that result from the tax are
Hmm.
pocketing the money.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the way that the whole threshold and stuff, it is interesting. But listen, you want to be a top dog, and you're gonna pay like a top dog. The way that you really, really hit that next level, it's you got to develop your own players. And this era of the regime does not have young, controllable players that are that impactful. They have some solid ones, they have some fine ones, but you know, Bryson Stott, people wrongfully wanted to call him Utley. He's obviously not even close. But like, if Bryson Stott,
See, if you thought he was Utley and you're mad after last season, like to me, that's on you.
it is on you.
It's like
I
the
think,
Haley Welch crypto coin scandal. If you
yeah,
lost
like
money,
I'm
you're an idiot.
frustrated
You're
with
a moron. Like
I'm
that's not.
frustrated with Stock because I thought he'd be a better hitter. And listen, he was apparently hurt for most of last year. Whatever. If Bryson Stott's
I'm
going to
not.
hit you
Listen, I expect Bryson
300
Stott
and
to
play
bounce
elite
back.
defense, that's fine. That's great. I can deal with that. But it's like when you don't have your young controllable players, and when we're talking about this, we're talking about three players on the offensive side of the field, and it's Alec Bohm, Bryson Stott, and Brandon Marsh. And if those three guys, none of which are obviously close to superstar caliber, you have like one of them, maybe two, are close to like all-star caliber, two in any given year. I think they can all three be, and obviously Bohm was an all-star last year. I think all three are capable of being all-stars throughout their career at least once. But I don't know. Like none of those players are going to be great
Yeah,
players.
Bohm was. I gotta be honest, Michael. Bohm was basically like a Dominic Brown All Star.
Yeah, he had a great month
I
of
will say
April.
this. I see someone mention no one has more stars than the Phillies, and I was like, yeah, like the Phillies have a lot of like. I mean, here's the thing with the Phillies stars, and I think oh God, I'm gonna go back to what I said earlier about like the last talking point. Like, at
Hmm.
what point are we just gonna say the stars just need to show up versus like we need the chemistry or lineup construction just doesn't work.
Yeah, I don't know. It feels like they're going to ride it until they can break it off without it being super difficult. And like that's the end of this year where if you really want to change things up, maybe you don't bring back Schwarber and JT. I think you should honestly bring them both back. I think you get them both back on cheaper deals, especially JT. I really don't think it's going to cost a ton. But like it just feels like at this point they're going to ride
Well,
it
so
until
I mean,
it
I
opens
went
up.
over Dave Dombrowski's like State of the Union address he had at the end of the season,
Hmm.
and he could theoretically go back if he gets grilled by like I don't know someone from WIP or something about it,
Hmm.
like you know, like oh well, I said we weren't going to make any major moves.
Yeah,
Like
it just
I said that.
yeah, it's just
I was not lying.
yeah, it's just frustrating.
But
I
know what he
do
did?
think
He did say though, he's like, we need to change our approach at the plate, which like, no duh. Like of course.
they know that, and it's like
But they
it's
need to
again
do it. And the problem is if they don't do it, then
you
like
need to get players to do it. I find it like
I mean, I gotta be honest, dude. Brandon Marsh having the worst chase rate, like in Major League Baseball, like one of the worst, if not the worst. Like at some point, when do you just not cut bait, but you're just sort of like, dude, like we're not expecting you to be Barry Bonds. That is not what we're asking you to do. But
no, I mean,
but like, good God, like what? You just can't see the ball coming at the plate.
which
You
is
need,
fair and all, but like we're also talking about the guy that hits seventh or eighth every day. Like that's what we're complaining about, that the seventh and eighth hole guy isn't some great hit. And I'm not disagreeing with you that he needs to be better. And he's a guy that's malleable at his age and whatever compared to say Nick Castellanos or
yeah,
Alec
but you
Bohm
just
or
brought up a
whatever.
cheap, controllable talent, Michael. Like you just
Yeah,
mentioned,
it
what,
needs to be
what if Kyle
better.
Schwarber walks? What if like the Dodgers are just like,
All right, then you have a lot more money to spend and you ought to spend it because you're not clearly capable of developing the star talent in your own system. Or at least if you are, it's not ready yet because you sucked at it for the previous 10 years.
Like
The
that,
Phillies,
like the Phillies didn't want to say this because I don't think they want to put pressure on any of these young guys. Which I think is fair. Like you should not be like ever as a Major League Baseball GM unless you have like Bobby Witt Jr. ready to be
yeah,
called up or someone of that caliber. Be like, yeah, we signed Kepler because we want a bridge guy until Justin Crawford is ready.
like it's just in theory, like from what this team, because again, it goes deeper than Dombrowski. It goes to the fact that they weren't able to build any talent from like 2012 on besides Aaron Nola
Well,
and like Reese
well,
Hoskins.
I'm going to
And
defend Dombrowski a little bit on that because he got here since 2021. Like most guys get called up when they're 22, 23, around that age. That means you're either a college player and you've been in the system for a couple years, like Aaron Nola, or most likely you were drafted out of high school and like Matt Clentak just did a ass job of building this team's farm system.
exactly, like you look at what this team, if you rewind us back to 2016 and you tell me the 2022 Phillies are going to the World Series. Honestly, could you imagine in 2016 you hear the 2022 Phillies are going to the World
With
Series?
Bryce Harper
Well,
as
no,
their
don't tell me the team. It says you pick the team. You map out who you think is going to be on the team in 2022 that leads them to the World Series. I don't think you could, maybe you can look down the line and be like, maybe Bryce Harper, and like you'll throw Nola and Hoskins in there as like definitely. But even then Hoskins wasn't even up yet. So you throw Nola on that team and that might be the only guy you get right. You would have thrown guys like Scott Kingery on the team. You would have thrown
Jorge Alfaro,
Jorge Alfaro, Michael Franco,
JP
uh,
Crawford,
Cesar Hernandez. You would have thrown a lot of those guys onto this team.
Jake Thompson,
The Kingery's like the big one of like, oh, these will
Scott
be
Kingery's Utley,
these will be the star players that are taking us to the World Series in a few years. And
Aaron
it's the fact
Aaron
that
Altair.
there's the fact that only Aaron Nola and Reese Hoskins were the only ones there, and like Ranger somewhat fits that bill. It made the job a lot harder, where you had to buy your way to contention, and now you've bought so much, and maybe you need a few more
Yeah,
nudges,
well, I
but
mean, like the Dodgers
this
and
is
the
where you're
Yankees
at.
sort of just did that too.
They do, and they do that. The Dodgers clearly show that they don't care to break. They don't have a limit. The Phillies have a limit. Dodgers don't.
I do think yeah, I think that covers it.
Yeah.
So let's just switch to football before I get even more depressed.
Thursday
So
night was a
Thursday Night
fun
Football.
game.
I thought this was the lock of the century. The Chargers were going to beat Denver, and I hate to say that because
Yeah.
you know
Listen,
we know people and
we
partial
know
Broncos.
Broncos fans. Listen, Bo Nix is not good, and I don't think.
Wow, you
Um,
still just hate. I sent you the counter tweet to that, by the way.
yeah, that was such a lame counter tweet. You want to talk about Tom freaking Brady as a check down merchant?
Tom
I don't
Brady
know.
was a check down merchant.
For 4,500 yards, like I don't know. He's
Yeah.
call me when Bo Nix checks down for 4,500 yards, please. I'll start listening then. But until that happens, until Bo Nix is
Why
basically
everyone
calling all
friggin'
these plays.
hated. That's why people would like insist Peyton Manning was better than Tom Brady. Was because like you've watched the Peyton highlights, he's throwing like 45-yard strikes to like Reggie Wayne, and
Well,
then you
actually,
watch Brady
Brady
and he's throwing
didn't
like
or couldn't
5-yard
do that
checkdowns to Jermaine Wiggins.
because God forbid Brady's got a brain on his shoulders and he's like, I'm gonna nickel and dime you to death because I can. And it's like, oh, when we have Randy Moss, yeah, I'll air that shit out now. When I have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah, but
air it
who's
out
Bo
now.
Nix throwing to?
Cortland Sutton is a great receiver. What
Oh,
are we
come
talking
on.
about here?
Stop
Don't
it.
come on, Cortland
Come
Sutton.
on. Like
He
yeah,
he is, man.
the great Cortland Sutton. Yes.
He's got 928 yards already on the year. Already.
Like he's
Season's
a solid receiver, Michael. He's not great. Like AJ Brown is great. Like
okay.
he is
He's
not
not 8
great.
Brown, but Cortland Sutton's definitely a pretty
Kavon
cool.
Vele.
my point is that Bo Nix had what 260 passing yards on Thursday, and 230 of them came after the catch. That's all he does. When you're asking, he had wide open on a double move, and he threw what was one of the worst deep balls I've ever seen. He threw it straight up into the air, and it was underthrown by about 9 yards. It was unbelievable. My point being with Bo Nix is that he is not that impactful to what the Broncos are doing this year. And it's every metric is pointing towards it. People can say what they want to say, what they're seeing. The Broncos have the best starting field position out of any team in football. The only reason that they're winning and maybe going to make the playoffs is because their defense went from bottom five to top five in an instant. And that is why. And like their offensive line got better too. But their defense was in the bottom five in every, yards per drive, points per drive, per game stats as well. And now it's like top four and everything. So yeah, when you go from one of the worst defenses to one of the best, your team's going to get a lot better. The offense stayed about average to below average from last year to this year. The difference is instead of having to go 80 yards and stalling and punting, you only have to go 50 yards and it becomes a touchdown or a field goal because you're just starting a lot closer. And you saw that 3 times in the Charger game. And then after they got the 3 touchdowns, everything kind of went to garbage. And Sean Payton knows that Bo Nix blows too, because if Sean Payton had a little bit of trust in Bo Nix, there was a 4th and 5 in the fourth quarter that he would have they were 4th and 5 at midfield. How are you not going for that? You don't trust your quarterback, is the answer. You would rather punt, try to pin them and get a stop, and get the ball back on first down at about the same spot you would be if you convert the first down instead of trying and risking the failure because even if you trust your defense to get a stop because you clearly are because you're giving them the ball back, you are trusting your defense whether you are punting it or going for it on fourth down, you're trusting your defense. You'd rather not take your chances at midfield, your team getting a stop because you don't trust Bo Nix to drive the length of the field. You trust him to only drive half the field, not the length. And if you trusted him to drive the whole length, God forbid, you would have tried to go for it on 4th and 5. But alas, they punted. Chargers put their foot in their throat and killed the rest of the game with some big runs from Gus Edwards and whatnot. Justin Herbert, I thought, played really, really well. I've been on this perhaps because I have a future that has a leg of Brock Bowers winning the Offensive Rookie of the Year, but I've convoluted a way, which, by the way, they are now tied in odds to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Daniels is like the runaway favorite, but Brock Bowers has finally caught Bo Nix, which finally, because the Bo Nix over Brock Bowers Offensive Rookie of the Year was highly disrespectful. But the Broncos do not have, by any stretch of the imagination, an easy path to they can certainly miss the playoffs, and they would need like the Colts or the Bengals. I think if the Colts went out and the Broncos lose out, I think the Colts get in. And the Colts play the Tennessee Titans, they play the New York Giants, and they play the Jacksonville
I don't
Jaguars.
know about that, Michael. The Broncos are 9-6, and the teams on the bubble are 3, 6, and 8 teams. So what you're saying? The Broncos are going to lose out, and one of these other teams are going to win out.
Well, potentially. The Colts schedule, they play the Titans, the Giants, and the Jags. That's pretty feasible, right?
Yeah, but the Colts
And
also might be the dumbest
listen, I'm not saying it's
football team in
easy,
the
but
league.
I'm also not saying
Like they'll
it's
win 2 out of those 3 games, and the game they're going to lose.
Denver, they lost to the Chargers. They play the Bengals next week. The Bengals offense has been, we know how good it's been. I'm not saying the Broncos will probably be favored, but and then they finish the year with Kansas City, which if Kansas City loses one of its next 2 games,
They probably should have beaten Kansas City. If you recall, they lost on a blocked field goal.
they did, but alas, that's what the Chiefs. You could say about every game with the Chiefs. Alas, they're 12-1. The way that gets hairy for them is that the Chiefs are going to rest their starters if they win the next two games. Because if they do, then they have the one seed locked up. But if they drop one to Houston or Pittsburgh, then they have no choice but to play their starters against Denver, because as long as the Bills also don't, lose a game, because
You think
lock up the
Mahomes
one
is? You
seed.
think you think Peyton's going to put a bounty out on Mahomes?
He might. That wouldn't shock me. That piece of garbage. But
You just say he's a piece of garbage. If he puts a bounty on Mahomes and injures him, I hate to say this, he might be the most like he might be like I'm not even gonna say this guy's name.
you can't say it. I know what you're gonna.
He might be the most beloved man in football because of how much people hate Kansas City.
I'll be like a martyr. But the NFL will have him taken care of. They can't have that happen. But anyways, that was my little rant. The game was a overall very entertaining game. I enjoyed it. Good Thursday night game. That was a huge must-need win for the Chargers. And it was dicey. Were they down 21-10? It was not looking good, but the free kick field goal really swayed the momentum of that game.
I agree. Now, what are your thoughts on QBR as a stat?
Now there's different ones. I guess like the passer rating
I
versus
have
quarterback
the
rating.
ESPN one. Now, according to ESPN, adjusted total quarterback rating, which values quarterback on all play types on a 0 to 100 scale, adjusting for strength of opposing defenses faced.
It's very it's hit or miss. Like I
Can
can't look.
I give you the top 5 names of this
I was
list?
gonna say I can't look at QBR alone. I need to look at it with other
Well, can I
numbers.
give you the top 5 now? Because this
Yeah.
factors in quarterback rushing. By the way,
Okay.
number 1 is Josh Allen with 79.3.
Makes sense.
Number 2 is Lamar Jackson, 76.
Makes a lot of sense.
Right. Number 3 is Joe Burrow, 74.
Makes a lot of sense.
Number 4, Kyler Murray, 68.4.
Listen, you trash on Kyler. I don't think.
Would you like to hear the names that are all behind Kyler Murray, though?
I mean, who's 5? Is it?
Jaden Daniels,
That doesn't surprise me.
6. Who do you think 6 is?
6 of all quarterbacks in
Yes.
football. Like it's not going to be. It's not Jalen, right?
No, he's
No.
he's number 9.
Okay. Who's been playing? It's not Mahomes.
By the way,
Is
being
it?
in the top 10, I think, is respectable.
Yeah,
Highly
it's not.
respectable.
It's not Herbert, is it?
No, he's actually 15th.
I was gonna say Herbert has had some quiet games. 6th. I'm drawing blanks now on quarterbacks across football.
When you
Oh,
said
is it
Herbert,
Goff? It's got to be Goff, right?
no,
Jordan Love,
he's 7. You're close. You were pretty close with
Sam
Herbert.
Darnold. Like, am I getting in the division? Like,
No, actually, Darnold's 14th.
okay, it's reasonable. Who was I close with?
Herbert,
Tua.
no.
No, but that's where my
Matthew
mind.
Stafford.
Okay, yeah.
Goff is 8th. Hurts is 9th. Purdy's 10th. Mahomes is 11th.
I honestly think that's pretty
And
fair.
12th is Derek Carr.
Yeah, I mean that's where you lose it. Derek
So
Carr.
I don't know. So I thought it
Derek
was
Carr.
funny.
The reason why Derek Carr will grade well is because he like never takes a sack. He will launch that ball out of bounds like no other player in the league, and they very much value his ability to not get sacked. Like you ever look at those charts where it's like, oh, quarterback escapability and whatever, and it's Derek Carr is always in the top right because that man will never take a sack in his life. He will get rid of that ball if his life depends on it.
I just mentioned QBR because that's the main argument of Allen over
Lamar, yeah, which is that MVP debate. It's
This
a good
feels
one.
like a
It's a
flawed
fun one.
statistic because let's be realistic here. Like Kyler Murray should not. I mean, Kyler Murray this year, like he's been so hit or miss.
He's been very inconsistent. His hits have been very good, so perhaps that's why. But yeah, entertaining MVP race with those two guys. Like Allen, if any year he deserves it, it's this year. But Lamar is also having the best year of his career. He's already won 2 MVPs.
Yeah, this
so
is
like,
pretty much like Embiid, Jokic last year.
yeah, it's interesting because like Lamar Lamar is unbelievable. Like Lamar is putting up such a crazy season, and like Josh Allen has had three pretty nasty stinkers this season, and one of which they actually won the game because the Colts are just a little incompetent. I think he was 9 of 30 in a game that they won, but like against Baltimore, Josh Allen was egregious, and he had another stinker mixed in there that I'm drawing a blank on. But he had three really bad games. That if you want to pick a really bad game Lamar had, this worst game of the year was probably the Steeler game, maybe the Eagle game, but neither of those were as bad as what Allen has produced in his worst games. And granted, Josh Allen has been an utter machine, especially as of late. Um, so we'll see. He'll probably win it. I think voter fatigue is a very real thing, and I think that's probably what's going to seal Lamar's fate, unless Allen really falters
Well, I think when you look
down
at
the stretch.
MVP, it's not who's the best statistical player; it's who's the most valuable player. And then you get in the whole can of worms of, well, what about stats? Because that means you're valuable. I think what hurts Lamar a little bit is that they added Derrick Henry and Zay Flowers took a step. Where if you look at the Bills, like
I
realistically, like
personally, go
if you
ahead.
look at the Bills, like I think James Cook is one of the most underrated players in football. But like he's Derrick Henry is gonna probably finish his career as a top five all time running back. So it's like he Lamar finally has help. But does that mean he should not win an MVP? I don't think that's necessarily true. But at
No, and
the
it's
same time,
like
like Michael, before the season started, when we talked about the Bills, you and I both picked them to miss the playoffs.
it's the narrative that going into the year where Allen lost Diggs and then he elevated his game and then it was Lamar got there like totally I see that angle.
This sort of feels like the hey, like we're gonna have them trade off now. That's gonna be like
What I think
the rivalry, I
is
guess.
the real factor as to why Lamar unfortunately won't win, and I'm okay with putting it all. It's all on Justin Tucker in my eyes because he's missed kicks that has directly led to like
Josh
three
Downs, Tyler
losses
Bass Merchant. No, I'm just
that
kidding.
directly led to three losses. Where like you look at the current standings, is that the Bills are 11-3 and Baltimore is 9-5. And it's like three pretty comfortable games that the Ravens would have won had Justin Tucker not been totally incompetent with his foot. And all of a sudden, Baltimore's 12-2, and one of their 12 wins was an absolute spanking of Buffalo. I genuinely believe if the Ravens were 12-2 and in
I did
serious
feel like
contention for
when
the one seed,
Buffalo, the Ravens caught Buffalo, that Buffalo was due for a flat spot. Not to defend them, but I also think though too with the Ravens, like man, I gotta be honest.
if that game happened in
You're blaming
December
Justin
instead of
Tucker,
September,
which is justified, but I also feel like too if you're having to blame your kicker for like a ton of losses, then at some point it should be on your defense or your offense for not coming up short in areas. And we know with the Ravens, it's definitely not their offense; it's their defense.
no, it is. But I think it's a lot easier to blame your kicker when your kicker is so highly invested in. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, oh, it's a rookie kicker, or it's a we have a new kicker every year, kicker carousel. Like, no, like we're talking about a guy that was pretty comfortably the best kicker of all time. And you just need to rely on him to make the kicks. And when he's kicking
Well,
at
he's
one of the
only got
worst
to get
clips
rid of
in
him.
the
I mean, he's
league.
just old.
Right. So, it's
Did you
cost
see the
them.
conspiracy theory that like he takes Adderall and he stopped
Yeah, I
taking
did see
Adderall?
that. That
That's
was
why he's missing all
interesting.
of his kicks.
I did see that actually. It was very interesting. But the Ravens have lost a handful of games because of it, and I think that like I don't know. I think that the record, if the Ravens are really contending for the one seed,
I think the thing though is that you look at Allen and you look at Lamar. Lamar really just craps the bet in the playoffs. Like this is going to be really important, like for him
well, and I
to.
also think that's unfair though for MVP voting. Like, what are we doing here?
I mean, I agree. I mean, I agree, but I
We're gonna
think
blame previous playoff failures when, again, both guys have gotten to the same point of distance in the playoffs.
Well, I think with
They've only
Allen, it's
reached a
like I
conference
think
champ.
I think with Allen's issues is like last year, Tyler Bass wide right, you know, PTSD for Bills fans. Um, Allen plays Mahomes in the playoffs. They're winning with what 17 seconds, and they kick a game tying field goal.
No, hey, listen, you're not.
Like
I'm not disagreeing
I
with
think
you.
it's
It's
sort of,
just
I do think there is a narrative that now it's Josh Allen's turn over Mahomes to get a shot to go run through the playoffs. I think that is the
and
narrative.
that's the narrative, and
That is
and
the narrative.
and we're admitting that we know that MVP
I
is a
also feel like
narrative,
I feel like MVP
narrative based
can
award.
also be like a curse too. So like
Yeah,
if I'm the Ravens, I think if I'm a Ravens fan, maybe I want Allen to win, and then when we play them in the playoffs, they're gonna have so much attention, and Lamar's gonna beat him.
we'll see. But anyways, it's a good segue into the games upcoming. So we'll start with Saturday today, 1 p.m. The Houston Texans head to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. Chiefs are 3.5 point favorites. They suffered a serious scare of Patrick Mahomes' ankle last week, which
Yeah,
always
yeah,
feels
I'm over that.
jammy.
I'm over that. Like, I think he just has like bad ankles. So every
Yeah,
time he gets hit there, he's just, you know what I
he's a
mean?
bit gimpy. Yeah,
It's like
I do
me.
think.
It's like Joel when he gets hurt. You're just like looks like the worst injury ever. And then it's like, oh, it's only a 1 to 2 week injury.
Right, right. And, Mahomes is very, very typical in that sort of way. Although the
Typical.
Chiefs still haven't been able to score, even against Cleveland, they only put up 21 points. But the Texans weekend,
Their third down play calling is some of the worst third down play calling in the league. When you watch their games.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they're I don't because they're so successful, Kansas City on first and second down, but their third down they get like so out of their own heads. I don't know, but the Texans week in and week out just show me they're like I don't know that they're just not serious, and I think it's an off season fix thing. New offensive coordinator, get CJ Stroud away from a football field so he can kind of just work on things to get better. It just is so uninspiring offensively. I think defensively they're very, very good and their pass rush is lethal. And I think that's enough to honestly, it's enough to wreck any game, especially against a team like the Chiefs where their tackles are really, really bad. But the line's only 3.5, and I think the Chiefs defense is going to do a very good job. You might see a game that's honestly fairly similar to what it was against Cleveland. So I'm taking the Chiefs minus 3.5.
I'm taking the Chiefs as well. I agree with you with the Texans. I think they're very unserious. They can't beat any good teams. I also think too, like I think this might be the game where we're like, man, Stroud's really overrated because he's going to
Mm-hmm.
play bad against the Chiefs. Because no one wants no one has brought it up at all. It's sort of been like year two NFL quarterback discourse. It's like, yeah, Bryce Young took a major step. It's going to be exciting when he gets weapons. Um, Anthony Richardson's like fun to watch. Will Levis blows, and then CJ Stroud. No one
No,
wants
no
to
one
talk
wants.
about him.
No
No one
one
wants
wants
to talk
to.
about it.
No, because
So
everyone anointed him very quickly, and I think
very quickly.
you could have anointed him as a great rookie without forcing him into top 5 conversations like all the time. And this is what you get. And no one, you're right, no one wants to talk about it. But so you're taking Kansas City as
Mhm.
well. All right. That takes us to the 4:30 game, Steelers Ravens. Big spread here, big line that I think everyone wants to take Pittsburgh because of it. Pittsburgh is a 7-point underdog
Well, it's
in
because Lamar
Baltimore.
historically has struggled a lot
Yeah,
against the Steelers defense.
Pittsburgh schemes Lamar. They play Lamar very, very well, very tightly. But I'm taking Baltimore. Not that I think Pittsburgh's gonna spiral or anything like that. But no George Pickens is such a humongous detriment to the Steelers. We saw it against the Eagles. The Eagles obviously are playing defensive football as good as anybody, the best defense in the league since the bye week, and it's not even close. But the Steelers' offense and what makes them go is they are touchdown or check down. Russell Wilson is a great deep ball thrower, has been his whole career. And the Steelers recognize that as his best strong suit. So they're like, okay, our offense is going to be bombs or those like 8-yard slant routes that are almost like mini verticals that he just takes one step and throws it, or just check downs, and we're gonna churn our way, hit our big plays when we need to, and that's it. The problem is when you take away George Pickens, who's arguably the best, 50-50 ball guy in the league, one of the best set of hands in the league, all that sort of stuff. You take him out of the equation, all of a sudden they don't really have a deep threat anymore. They don't have guys that can go down and make a play and go get a ball. So your deep threats need to be like wide open in order for you to have a shot. You remove that element of the offense, it becomes very, very predictable. They're going to try to run the ball, and they're really not going to try to push the ball down the field. So I just don't think Pittsburgh's offense, even if their defense plays another good game against Lamar, as it usually does, I just don't think their offense is going to be able to score close to enough points to really keep up. So I'm taking Baltimore -7.
Yeah, I'm taking a Baltimore -7. It's funny. The Steelers are this like run first team, and everyone like just picks Najee Harris in like the fourth or fifth round, being like, "Oh my god, he's gonna break out! Oh my god, he's gonna break out!" Like, dude, he's a backup running back who just gets 250 carries a year. He averages less than 4 yards per carry, which is bad. And you saw it again in the Eagles game. He cost them the game against the Eagles. That fumble was a massive 14-point swing. The game was
Yeah,
over at that point.
yeah,
Game over.
yeah, yep.
And
Okay.
yeah, so
So on to Sunday, 1 o'clock slate. We're going to start in the AFC North. We're going to stay in the AFC North, I should say. The Cleveland Browns going to play the Cincinnati Bengals. DTR is going to be getting the nod from Cleveland. They're benching Jameis Winston. I don't know. Like, what's the point? I almost feel like saying, do you just want to let DTR run around and play? I guess that's fine.
they need to eliminate any hope of Jameis Winston being their quarterback next season because of Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. Jerry Jeudy did already sign his extension with the Browns, like a 3-year, $52 million contract. So it's not like, although if I am Jerry Jeudy, like, the guy that was the primary quarterback to help you get over 1,000 yards for the first time in your career, as soon as you hit that number, you're getting benched. I think I'd be like, damn, that kind of blows. Nick Chubb broke his foot. Like, it's really just, it's dark times in Cleveland. And I think the Bengals, their defense is maybe putting things together at the right time. Maybe they're just playing bad offenses, but this is also another bad offense. So
I would say that the Cowboys offense is putrid, and they got
Titans
really
offense
lucky on a Fugazi punt, but well, that's
or the
neither here nor
Titans
there.
offense. No, I hear you, but I do think the Browns offense fits the bill of the
No,
same
I
level
agree.
of
They're that
ability.
level of bad.
So I'm taking the Bengals -9.
I'm going to take the Browns to cover because Joe Burrow in his career against
He
the
is bad
Browns
against the Browns.
is 2-5. One of those wins came this year on October the 20th. 15 of 25, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. StatMuse is terrible now. Not as good as it used to be. I have to pay for it now, but
Yeah.
um, I mean, Joe Burrow just hasn't. I think there's one guy that gets into Joe Burrow's head. It's Jim Schwartz, and I feel like Jim Schwartz might be coaching for another job next year. So what he's going to do. He's going to frustrate him. He's going to frustrate Burrow. Or the Browns are just going to pack it in and just get completely annihilated.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to switch my pick. I'm going to take the Bengals. It feels like the Browns are just packing it in at this
they
point.
they really are packing it in. All right, next game we have here. Sorry, my tab is I had to close my tab of Michael Franco's current age to see if he would have been viable for
Where was he playing for?
2022.
Like in the Korean League, the
Right.
KBO.
We're staying up north. The Detroit Lions are on the road against the Chicago Bears. The Bears are 7-point underdogs. The Bears, it's a shame because their new offensive coordinator, the interim offensive coordinator, actually looked like he had some things put together, and then they made him the interim head coach, and I just think that that was too much to handle at once, and thus like making everything fall apart. The Bears are totally just awful. They have a lot of work to do in the offseason, and I think it would behoove them to make their offensive line as bulletproof as they possibly can. Build up that offensive line and get in and throw out the entire coaching staff and
Well, the
hope it
problem
all
is the coaches.
plays out.
It's the coaching. I mean, their offensive line is bad, but at the same time, Michael, like I don't know. This is kind of where like I feel like Ryan Poles is like the Timu Howie Roseman, where it's like he makes some of these moves and people anoint him as this genius. But like Michael, he passed on Jalen Carter for Darnell Wright because they drafted for need. They traded a second round pick for Keenan Allen.
Yeah, no,
And then they drafted Roma Dunzier, who like can't get any separation. They basically like were like we need to. They're like, oh, Roma Dunzier. Like I don't know, man. Like like people thought he was this deep threat receiver, and he
I mean,
just
yeah, Roma Dunze, I think he's still good. It's just you, you have a lot of, you have a huge culture problem. You look at how the receivers play and how everyone runs around, how everyone on the team carries themselves. They all carry themselves in a way that no fan should want their players to carry themselves, from top to bottom, every single one of them. You get DJ Moore limping off the field mid play. You have Keenan Allen like slowing up on routes and all receivers really kind of stop their routes because they don't think they're getting the ball. You got defensive players taunting fans before Hail Marys and like being out of position for it. Caleb Williams is a very like emotional person. It's just the new wave athlete, whatever, and like he wears his stuff on his sleeve and like it's just all of it really just shows that there's just a lot of problems and it all kind of needs to get recycled.
it's a
And
culture issue. It's a
it's a
culture
culture
issue.
issue. And I think it would behoove them to just do everything you can on the offensive side of the ball to make your quarterback's life a lot easier. And you've made a very conscious effort to build out the receiver room, whether better or for worse. It's built out, it exists. I really think you need to fully invest in the offensive line as your number one priority this offseason. If I'm a Bears fan,
The Chargers.
I would take having a dog shit defense next year if it meant that my offense has a great offensive line, the receivers are the same, and I got the quarterback. Like I would be totally okay with that.
You mean if when the Bears draft Mason Graham or Will Johnson from Michigan that
Right. Like
they're not helping Caleb Williams
exactly. Like I just go get offensive line help
or Ashton
and
Genty?
make that work. But to this game, talk about the Lions. They are beaten, they are battered, they are destroyed, every ounce of it.
Hey, David Montgomery might be back for the playoffs, Michael.
Not for nothing. Like the Lions are stupid to not say, no, idiot, you're going to get the surgery because you just gave him a contract. You just like there's a reason David Montgomery is pushing to come back, and it's because he signed a 2-year contract extension before the season's end. He knows he has the next 2 years pretty secure in his mind. He is willing to push the limits of his body for a potential Super Bowl run. That's great. If I'm the Lions, I'm saying no, dude. I'll push through with Gibbs and make it work. I'm not risking you rehabbing this knee tear currently to try to maybe get back for a conference championship or a Super Bowl game in like a month and a half after tearing your knee instead of getting the surgery and starting that now. Like, what's the point? He rehabs, they lose in like the divisional or something because they're so banged up, and now he's got to go get the surgery in Jan. Not that it's a huge difference, but it's just you're just wasting time, in my opinion. I think it's very dumb on the Lions' part. Yet Aiden Hutchinson, your cornerstone pass rusher, trying to force himself back from a broken leg to go play potentially in the Super Bowl. Where like it just, I don't know. I just don't think from a team perspective they're
Makes
handling
it
it the
makes
right
you
way.
think that the players know that like
Ben
this is
Johnson's leaving. Yeah.
or like this is their best shot at winning a Super Bowl.
Well, I think, yeah, maybe. I mean, listen, you heard what Dan Campbell said after they lost the conference championship game last year, and he basically he laid it out pretty nicely. It was good. Like he's like, it is so hard to get here, and it's no guarantee that you'll get back. You're gonna try hard, but I want them to understand that this is so difficult, and like, you know, making it a good point. It was a good one of his good quotes. All that being said, I do think at some point all this is going to catch up to him. Maybe it doesn't hit till the playoffs. Maybe it hits now. Maybe it hits in the end of the regular season. But I think between the cold weather that's going to be in Chicago and all the injuries that they have taken place and any semblance of pride the
Oh
Bears have left,
God, if they lose this, the Lions lose.
maybe they don't lose, but I
If they
think they
lose
keep
this
a
game, Michael, man, they're going to be labeled as frauds because
maybe
they're
they
an indoor
I don't think they'll
team.
be labeled as frauds as much as they'll be labeled as like they're just so injured. Like they won't be
But
labeled as
man, this
fraud.
Bears, like Michael, this Bears team is like we just talked about the Browns packing it in. I mean, good God, you got Caleb Williams like Caleb Williams just wants this season to be over. Like if you interviewed him right now, you're like, hey, what are you most excited for? He's gonna say for the season to be over.
I mean, that's what and all the players. Maybe you're right, but all the players are like that. Honestly, they asked DJ Moore, like, what are you looking forward to in the off
Golfing.
season? And he said vacation, and everyone was laughing. He's like, yeah, just like I got to get my mind away. So like they are mentally checked out. It's probably just the homer in me saying the Bears are going to keep it close, but I'll take Chicago +7 in the cold. Jared Goff can't handle the cold.
I'm taking the Lions. I have Jameer Gibbs on my fantasy team, and I think it's the Bears are just looking to go on vacation. This is gonna be like Jameer Gibbs, like I need to be I need
The
to be
guy.
the guy.
Yeah.
Dave can just chill for the next 6 weeks. I mean,
Yeah.
real quick because you're railing on Dan Campbell. I do have a critique of Dan Campbell that not a single person has brought up. So he's got 22 players on injured reserve. Michael, all those blowout wins
Oh,
they had
I've
earlier in
been
the year,
spreading this take of yours to people around me. I've
was
been
it really
sharing it.
necessary to leave Aiden Hutchinson in up like 30 points on the Cowboys so you can run the score up more? Was it really
No,
necessary to like give Dave Montgomery all of these carries? You
yeah.
know,
Listen, I'll say whether it's oh, the specific game. I just think it's a combination of a lot of things. It's one that what you're saying is that they're running up the score on these teams. They're so go 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 and forcing it, even when they're games over, games in hand. That I do think it leads to just more wear and tear on the body for all these players. And sometimes, the chickens come home to roost.
well, you go with your second stringers. You don't go up
Well,
40.
that's not what their thing is. And what also their thing is they're a very physical team, one of the most physical
I thought
teams
you
in
were going to say
football.
stupid because they are
No.
stupid.
Well, yeah, but they're a very physical team. They're extremely, extremely physical. That's their MO, punch you in the mouth on both sides of the ball. When you play a very physical brand of football, you get banged up a lot. Listen, the Eagles play a very physical brand of football, and they got guys banged up every week. Knock on wood, it hasn't been as serious as what the Lions' injuries have been. But every week the Eagles are dealing with something. Jalen Hurts got a broken finger. AJ Brown's knees jacked up. How many times have hamstrings been pulled this year? Landon Dickerson's gimping around the entire second half of the game on the sideline. Lane Johnson's got to come out for a few plays almost every week because of an ankle thing. Like it's when you play so physically demanding and physical,
Your phone's blowing up, by the way.
it is when you physical smash mouth. It just leads to it sometimes, and I think it's a culmination of everything. it's a culmination of some bad luck, running up the score, and such a physical brand of football that you get a recipe where a lot of key players are seriously injured. And listen, that's enough to totally derail what the Lions have had going for them all year. So, anyways, next game, the Arizona Cardinals and the Carolina Panthers. In a week where the Panthers were finally given a little bit of respect for all their hard
Yeah,
fought
we fell for the
losses,
bait, bruh.
we fell for the bait. They got railed by the Dallas Cowboys. Wasn't even close. They got absolutely trounced by Cooper Rush, no less. Um,
Well,
yeah,
Bryce Young had his worst game since the resurgence.
yes, like that was felt like a given, right? It was. We kept saying, "Oh, it's only a matter of time before Bryce Young really reverts," and we kept saying that when they were playing these good teams, and he kept showing off, kept playing good enough, very good, and then come insert the Dallas Cowboys, who, again, I'll say it again, since Micah Parsons got healthy, the defense has played much better. Um, but the Cowboys totally took it to
Well,
them.
the Cowboys have a great rush defense, and like their offense really centers around Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah. And the Cardinals, on the other hand, 500 on the outside looking in. They,
I like Arizona today
yeah, I do
or
too. I
tomorrow.
like Arizona. They're 4.5 point favorites on the road. I like them to win. I like them to cover. Big
Yeah,
spot for them. They
Arizona
got to
just
have it.
beats every bad team, and they can never beat a team that has a winning record. That's just unfortunately the way they are. But yeah, the Panthers certainly do not have a winning record, Michael. So we're gonna go with the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah. Next game we have is the Eagle game, which we will push back till the end. And then we have the Atlanta Falcons at home against the New York Football Giants. So, John, I talked about how I thought of a way for Denver to miss the playoffs. On the same side, I've also thought of a way for the Washington Commanders to miss the playoffs. And part of that equation is the Atlanta Falcons winning out. And they do play the Commanders, not this week, but next week. And obviously, that will be the huge test. But it starts with this home game for the Falcons against the Giants. Seemingly a perfect opponent for your rookie quarterback to get his
I
first
can't
start
think of a better one.
at home. The Giants. Kirk Cousins is off the team. He's expected to be cut, not even just benched. He's now been cut. And I think Kirk is very upset with the decision for him to get benched. But I don't know. I think we all laughed at the Falcons on draft day for drafting Penix. I don't think this is how we thought it was going to go.
I
Where
didn't. I see. So I thought
I
about
didn't
it
think he would
after
get
that, and I think even
benched.
said, I thought to you. I said it's stupid. I said the dumb decision was signing Cousins. The
Yes,
idea,
absolutely.
the idea of draft, like I think we all kind of thought Michael Penix is like a top 10 quarterback pick. Like it wasn't like a
I
reach.
didn't think he was going top 10. I
I
thought
kind of
Penix
thought
was
he
going
was.
in the I thought Penix was going in like the late teens, honestly. And I sure as hell didn't think the Falcons were going to take him.
I didn't
And
think the Falcons were going to take him either, but
talk about ineptitude. When Arthur Blank says, I really like Lamar Jackson, but just not sure if his style of play can hold up with his health for us to commit to him. And then signing the 35-year-old quarterback to a 4-year deal the season after he tears his Achilles.
it was never
Wow.
really a mobile, like a really a mobile guy. You know,
No, and that's what you're banking it off of. But instead, now you see a guy that was never mobile, now really can't move, and now also lost all the zip on his throws. Oh boy, what an absolute travesty that was. Now not on the team. Kirk Cousins is
I think
pissed.
Brent Coleman tweeted it best when he said, "Having an owner who just shuts up and just signs a check is a major advantage."
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. When you have owners that get involved too much, this is what we get. So Michael Penix is coming into what I think is a very good situation. It's one of the better ones for a rookie. You have say what you want about Kyle Pitts. Maybe he's just not that good. But between Kyle Pitts and Drake London, you have two very large receiving options with very wide and large catch radii. And Michael Penix, as a guy that at college was just slinging it. He's got great arm talent, His accuracy is a bit shaky, but he's got a ton of strength on his arm, and he's not afraid to push it down the field. So you run some seam routes up the slot fades with Drake London and with Kyle Pitts. I bet you'll hit a few just because Penix is not going to be afraid to push it and throw it down the field. Combo that with an offensive line that blocks extremely well for your run game, which you have two of the better running backs, two of the harder running backs to tackle in Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, two very physically challenging running backs to bring down. It's a pretty damn good situation for a rookie quarterback to be walking into. Combo this with you're at home against the Giants, very good opponent for you to go in and get yourself assimilated to. I'm excited for him, honestly. I think this is a really good spot, and I think it's going to go well for them. They need to win out if they want to make the playoffs, and I think this is a perfect start. I'm taking Atlanta minus 8.5 at home.
I'm taking Atlanta minus 8.5 at home. Michael, it would be interesting if the Falcons somehow win the NFC South because they do own the tiebreaker on.
Well, they'll have the division advantage because obviously Atlanta beat Tampa twice, and those two losses have that's enough. Atlanta's only lost once in the division, and Tampa's already lost twice. Where if they both finish with two losses in the division, like you said, the head-to-head tiebreaker goes to the Falcons. So my whole point, the Commanders missing the playoffs. If the Falcons win out, starts today. Commanders drop 2 of 3, which is not unfeasible. And then Tampa wins at least 2, which again is also not unfeasible. Washington would be out of the playoff picture, and the Falcons would take
If the
the wild
Commanders,
card
after
spot.
starting 6-2, miss the playoffs, like Dan Campbell's first year, Dan Campbell is painful.
Dan Quinn.
Dan Quinn, first year's extremely painful endings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Next game we have AFC South bout.
Jesus.
The Tennessee Titans and the Indianapolis Colts.
Is Levis still benched, or is it going to be Mason Rudolph?
It is. It's Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph
Wow.
leading the charge for the Titans. I'm taking the Colts minus 3.5. The Titans are just, I don't know. They're bad, man. They are. Not
I got to be honest, dude.
team.
If the Colts have any self-respect, they should blow out the Titans tomorrow because, man, dude. I watched some of the highlights. I'm saying air quotes highlights of that Broncos Colts game. I mean, number one, Jonathan Taylor. At this point, how do you do with the Deshaun Jackson dropping the ball at the 1 and not just hold on to the damn ball when you're going into the end zone? Right? And
like
then
that was embarrassing. Like I have friends that not only lost money because of betting either Jonathan Taylor touchdown or the Colts money line, and like that was obviously the huge turn of the tide in the game. But I also have friends or friend of friends, fantasy football, huge implications where it wasn't only Jonathan Taylor, but that happened in the Bengals game too. The Bengals defense was it Cam Taylor-Britt that was to just drop the ball before returning a pick 6, and it became a touchback. So it happened twice, which I don't know the last time I've seen it happen twice in the same week. But I know people that in fantasy playoffs had Jonathan Taylor and the Bengals defense and got 12 points. It's 14 points because of a fumble, maybe even more depending on your league, just ripped out of your hands because guys don't want to carry the ball into the end zone. Regardless, the Jonathan Taylor one's significantly worse. I mean, you're playing for your playoff lives here. You beat the Broncos last week. All of a sudden, the Broncos are probably more favored to miss than to make.
Right.
And
because you now own the tiebreaker on them.
You own the tiebreaker. You're 7. You got 7-7. The Broncos would only be 8-6. Like, you're right there. It's right. And you got a very easy schedule to end the year. Broncos have a tough one to end the year. That's just lack of focus. That's bad stuff right there. Like, I'm not a big bench a player guy, but like maybe I sit Taylor for a quarter or something and hope that we can handle the Titans. Like
Michael, like I agree with you. Like I'm not a huge bench a guy, but for something like that, like you need to send a message to like him and the team. Like that is unacceptable.
it's that this is 2 years in a row now where the
Like you're
Colts
like you're making an
have
ass out of yourself on national television, and you're costing us games.
like and huge games. This isn't week 2 in a blowout where you don't do it and it's like, oh, that's a bad look, but we can laugh about it because we handled the team or whatever. No, that was a tied game, playoff implications, like just can never
It
happen.
also doesn't
And
really help your reputation when you had the type of holdout that he had, where everyone had sympathy for you and was like, you know,
pay the
running back
man.
hellscape, pay the guy,
Yeah.
but, and then he does that.
There's no excuse for it other than just being an idiot. And it can really never happen. And we're on year 2 now of the Colts, where last year it was the third string running back dropping a pass on 4th and 1 that would have sent Gardner Minshew and the Colts into the playoffs, which that's a mistake so much more feasible. You drop a pass, shit happens. It's awful. Feels like it can never happen, but it's like making an error in baseball. It's just sometimes it's just going to happen. You're just going to drop a pass.
Exactly. You get your eyes caught in the lights. You
You're going to
see the
drop a
ball
pass.
coming.
You just drop it. Like it just happens. But dropping the football before the end zone is inexcusable. There's no that's just terrible, terrible stuff. But anyways, we're both taking the Colts. Next game, we have the Rams and the Jets. Disgusting. I'm taking the Rams -3. The Jets are in hell.
What? It's only -3.
Yeah, I don't know.
Why?
Maybe it's bait. Maybe the Jets will
What is
win.
that? Why?
I don't know. Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, is listening to his teenage son's Madden opinions for player evaluation.
You know why I think it's -3, Michael? This is why it's -3. I think I might have sent this to you. It was a video. It's like the Jets when it's time to ruin their own draft position.
Yeah, they do it every time. And
I'm going to take the Jets. This will be the most Jets thing ever to win this game.
Yeah. All right. Enough of that. Into the 4 o'clocks. We have the Vikings and the Seahawks. Is Geno Smith playing?
Yes.
He is playing.
I thought he cleared to practice.
He cleared to practice, but like, is he?
Have you seen Sam Howell?
Expects him. Listen, I've seen him throw 500 yards against the Eagles, so I don't know.
Yeah, well,
but,
that's.
Anyways, so Geno's in the lineup. Huge.
Because Charbonnet's hurt.
Yeah, and what's his name? Is Kenneth Walker back?
Yes.
Okay, so Walker's back. Geno's back. Vikings are handling their business. They're a good team. Huge game for Seattle. Seattle wins this game, and it almost not all but puts it actually does not all but put the division out of reach. But they lose this game, and it does them a lot worse than for the division and their playoff hopes. So season on the line, basically, for the Seattle Seahawks, where the Vikings, they're viewing this with like division on the line. They need to win to ensure to make that last game against the Lions mean something for their division hopes. Both teams got something to play for. The Vikings are 3-point favorites on the road. This game's in Seattle. This game's going to be disgusting, apparently. The weather out there is awful, I think. We'll take a look.
Well, I mean, the
rain
Seahawks,
all day. The
Seahawks are used to this, though, right?
They are, but interestingly enough, the Seahawks have lost their home field advantage over the years. Fans getting priced out, not the real fans getting out there. I have the "Go Pack Go" chants on Sunday Night Football were loud, and Buffalo did it to them earlier in the year. Seattle fans are not good. The home field advantage in terms of the crowd no longer existing. What a shame.
Maybe they're just all into the Kraken, Michael.
Maybe they're all in on the Kraken is right. I'm going to take Seattle though +3. I've been picking them often, and they've bitten me probably a lot this year if I go through it. But I'm gonna rock with it here. Season on the line. I think this is a tough spot for Minnesota too. It's almost a look ahead for Green Bay next week, which is a humongous game for them.
I'm kind of thinking with the Seattle vibes here. Michael,
Hmm.
the this is the biggest game in Sam Darnold's career. And if you think of it this way too, every game from here on out is going to be the biggest game of Sam Darnold's career.
Yeah,
Next week's going to be the biggest. Then the week after that, then the
yeah.
playoffs, right? I mean, we've kind of seen this time and time again when the Vikings have like these scab quarterbacks throughout their history where they, if you look at going all the way back to like Randall Cunningham
Hmm.
and like, well, actually, kind of that's actually pretty disrespectful to Randall. They went 15-1 that year, but they also had rookie Randy Moss and Hall of Fame Chris Carter. But like I don't know, it's just like when like the Vikings they just disappoint you. Like you think in this game, oh, Sam Darnold, man, comeback player of the year, most improved, whatever, he's the guy.
Hmm.
Like I feel like when you're not like a legit QB, like this is the game you just blow.
Yeah, yeah. This is a tough spot, and
And they're not a physical team. Like the Vikings are not a physical offense, and that's the biggest weakness of the Seahawks, Michael, as you well know, is they're soft.
yeah.
They're soft. Like they're soft. So I don't think that this is a good advantage. I think for Seattle.
Hmm.
So I'm taking the Seahawks.
Hmm. Next game we have is the Patriots and the Bills.
Wow,
So
-14.
Buffalo minus 14.
Man,
Probably a
man,
long time
Lamar's
since
got to
that's been
Lamar's got to
won.
go through the team that gives him the most issues, and then Josh Allen has the
Gets this.
New
Exactly,
England
man.
Patriots.
I'm telling you, man. So
Wow.
um I'm taking Buffalo minus 14. It's like 25 years of revenge is built in every time these two teams play each other, and like they do it we talk about running up the score. The Bills do it in like 3 quarters, and then they put in whoever their backups are at the end of the game. And they've been doing it for years. They do it in the playoff. It's just been consistent. So
Michael,
I'm
you
taking
say this,
Buffalo.
so they're laying 14 points now,
That's a lot of points to
justif-
cover.
justifiably so, right? One thing that no one has brought up the last 2 weeks with the Bills is that their defense has allowed a combined like 83 points,
Yeah.
86 points, whatever, right? Wouldn't it be something if Drake May, the other rookie quarterback, who a lot of people really like his future and think like, oh, all the Patriots need to do is just go wild in free agency, most cap space, maybe draft. I can't even pronounce. I don't know how to pronounce his name. The wide receiver from University of Arizona,
Oh, the rookie this year. Yeah.
right?
Regardless.
Like wouldn't it be something if we see another quarterback duel? Because we're all like talking about the Bills, 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 and the Chiefs are frauds, devil magic, Patrick Mahomes sacrificing goats at halftime. Dude, you're not going to win a Super Bowl if you get up 40 points a game. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No. Now
Sorry.
their defense is very not like it's very fine. It's a problem. That's why, talk about the Eagles, whatever. It's
The
why I think the
defense
Eagles
is
have such an
fine. I don't
advantage.
think the defense is fine.
Well,
They just play a bunch of ass teams, and then
they're
their
like
defense looks
ninth.
good.
They're like ninth in yards allowed, ninth worst in yards allowed, and like eighth best in points allowed. They play a very bend don't break, and when you're playing against an elite offense, they just
They're going to
break.
break.
But when you're playing against more middle of the road
Mm.
teams, they bend, but they're
I'm
not
going to take the
breaking.
Patriots to cover the 14 points.
All right. Next game we have is the San Francisco 49ers
Wow.
in Miami to take on the Dolphins. The Dolphins have shown time in and again that they can never win a big game. Ever. Ever. And does this count as a big game anymore? Is the season over for Miami? Like, is it
Oh, life
chalked?
support.
It's on life support. It's on less than life support. Like they might need to be resuscitated. Like I'm not going to say what I was going to say. The Niners are also mailing it in. They are disgusting. They're a dumpster. You got Debo complaining about targets, and now he can't catch the ball. You got Trent Williams like demanding to be paid
Dude,
and being a problem.
you
He's
know for
sitting
a
out
fact
now.
that Campbell tomorrow and Ben Johnson are like, we need to get Skipper another touchdown to rub it in that washed up loser Debo's
Yeah,
face after
yeah,
losing to them.
yeah, totally. I don't even know. I'm taking the Niners. Screw the Dolphins. I hate the Niners, obviously, but like the Dolphins, they're so useless that it just bothers me. They're so they have so much talent for what they have, but they're so soft and their quarterback blows. I can't. They're so annoying. The Dolphins really bother me. They do this whole crap every year. I'm taking the Niners to officially put the nail in the Dolphins' coffin,
I'm
and
taking
what should
the
be the
Niners
era.
as well, Michael. You know what's funny about the Dolphins? It's like if you took like a bunch of streamers and like made them like a football team, like that is literally the Miami Dolphins. Like
Wow.
they're a bunch of scumbag con artists, you
Yeah.
know. You
Yeah.
know, I would not be surprised in the offseason if Mike McDaniel's gonna have a meme coin he's gonna try to get you to buy.
Yeah.
Like that's just how they are,
Yeah.
and they're soft. Like it's funny when remember we were panicking about the Fangio hiring because of when all they did was complain about him. When now that we just see that they're losers.
They were just really soft and really losers and couldn't handle it. Yeah, it's embarrassing. Yeah. Next game. Oh my god. This is the worst game on the slate, I think. The Jacksonville Jaguars are in Vegas at 4:30 to play the
This
Raiders.
has massive like future of the NFL implications if Cam Ward or Shador are like great
Yeah,
quarterbacks.
no, this is huge, and I don't know who's going to be better at tanking. I think
Well, Michael, the last time the Raiders had the first overall pick, it was 2007, where they proceeded to make possibly the worst draft choice in NFL history in Jamarcus Russell. That's your context.
but the Jags
Let me pull up
are
Tankathon. Hold on,
the
I'm pulling up.
Jags are experts at getting the first overall pick. Well,
Oh,
we're
the
talking
Masters.
about we're
They are
talking
the
about the best
Masters.
of the best. So does that mean the Raiders are going to win? I think so. They're being
So if the
favored for this
Jags
reason.
lose and the Raiders win, that means they're both 3-12. And then it comes down to strength of schedule. Now the Raiders,
No, it doesn't. There's no head to head there.
no, it's based off of strength of schedule.
That's ridiculous. Why is there no head to head? Just because you're going the other way, you're going backwards. That's
Yeah,
that's bogus. No. That can't be right. That cannot. That's
I think it's because I think it's
so. Let's say that's ridiculous. So if they both, let's say they,
like the Jags and the Titans are both 3-11, but the Jags are picking fourth and the Titans are picking sixth.
well, all right. Let's say the Raiders and the Jags. Let's say the Jags lose out because the Titans are in there. Jags lose, Raiders lose. If the Jags lose, no, I think it's tiebreaker first, and then it goes strength of schedule. I think head to head does matter because the
Oh, it
Raiders will
does.
have the better strength of schedule, but I think the head to head holds weight first. I think that's the second tiebreaker. I think.
Then why
Regardless,
do you flip a coin?
there's a coin. Oh, God. That's too much. Too much bad football on the brain. I'm taking the Raiders to win, I guess. I'll take the Jags to keep the tank alive. I don't know. Such a
What do
slop
we got?
game.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Raiders as well. Doug Peterson
Brock
is last.
Bowers' 200 receiving yard game is incoming.
Wow.
To steal the offensive rookie of
He's
the
like
year.
legitimately like Tony Gonzalez Jr.
Yeah, he's really freaking good.
Like that was just like Tony Gonzalez was on some like awful Chiefs teams, and he would
Mm-hmm.
have like 1,500 receiving yards as like a tight end in the the really like backwards thinking NFL of like 1999. Like
Yeah.
that's like insanity, right? That's Brock Bowers. That legitimately is Brock Bowers. And the Jags, I mean, Travis Hunter, I hope you like Jacksonville, my man, because you might be most likely be playing there.
I think he will. He almost went to Florida State.
Oh,
He was at Florida State and then he left for Dion. So
no.
he's used to it.
No.
Next game, the Tampa Bay
This
Buccaneers
has
take on the
massive
Dallas.
playoff implications, Michael. You can't deny that.
For a lot of people, for not just the Buccaneers, obviously, not just the Falcons, not just the Commanders, but even the Eagles. You talk about strength of schedule favoring. If us and the Vikings both finish 15-2, this would be a massive game for the Cowboys to win. For the Eagles, honestly, as Eagle fans, we should be rooting for the Cowboys on Sunday night. It is the correct thing to do. All that being said, though,
Ew.
Tampa has been very, very good. Baker's cooking. The defense looks all right. If Tampa's gonna,
What if the correct thing for the Cowboys to do, like, if you want to just second guess yourselves, would like trade Dak for like a million picks and then sign Baker
are you
Mayfield in the
getting a
offseason?
million picks for Dak Prescott?
I mean, have you seen some of the quarterbacks in this league, Michael?
No, I hear you. I just teams are very weird about trading for quarterbacks. It's a very weird market. It's not so slam dunk sometimes, and I think there'll be enough teams that talk themselves out of Dak.
I like
Dude, if
getting.
someone could talk themselves out of Lamar, you could talk yourselves out of Dak.
Well, that was because like Lamar's value was like an all-time low, and I think it was
What
like
is Dak's value right
I
now?
don't. I don't know, he sells mattresses, bro. I don't freaking know, bro.
I no, listen, that's oh my god, is that the best plan of? I have no idea what the best plan of action for the Cowboys is. They've made their own bed.
All I'm saying is like Baker Mayfield. Like, listen, if the Cowboys are going to get rolled, Baker Mayfield's going to show up to your stadium and he's just going to mock the Cowboys. I would not be shocked if he goes and does something on the star, like plant the imaginary flag on the star.
Maybe he
He's like,
does the TO thing.
oh my god, could you imagine if he does that? That'd be hysterical.
So Mike
Because he
Evans,
mocked the Giants by going like this for 15 straight seconds. I'm just saying, I don't think it's
Mike
out.
Evans is pretty close to 1,000 yards, and I think he's going to get it. And listen,
Let's pull, yeah,
they're
Mike
going to keep it
Evans.
pushing.
You
He
know
had a
what?
big
Mike
week
Evans
last
cost
week
me a
for it.
parlay, so screw Mike Evans. I hope he finishes with 990.
Ah, that's not right. He's a nice
Real
guy.
quick, Mike Evans, though. Real quick on Mike Evans. Like, a lot of people say he's like a first ballot Hall of Famer because of all these 1,000 yard years. I don't know if being like the eighth best receiver in football, like 10 straight years, should necessarily qualify you to be like a first ballot Hall of Famer, in my opinion.
I understand your point, and I don't think it's a bad thought. But I do think
Like, is he a Hall of Famer? Yes.
absolutely.
Should he be a first ballot Hall of Famer when T.O. and Moss weren't first ballot Hall of Famers? Absolutely
Well,
not.
that's because those are like I don't think we can base it off that anymore because T.O. wasn't the first ballot Hall of Famer because
He was a
people didn't
psycho.
like people didn't like T.O. Like Terrell Owens is potentially like a top 3 receiver of all time, and
Correct.
he's not
Well,
a first ballot Hall of Famer just because
like
people didn't
Jerry
like him.
Rice, Randy Moss, and now we're gonna have a
T.O.
debate between the like that third spot.
Yes,
Like
and
Larry
T.O.
Fitz.
is in the conversation, and you're not having him in the Hall of Fame
Well,
because you don't like him.
no, I'm just saying, like,
That's my
man.
point. My point is that I don't think I
But
can use
I think he
him.
should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer, in my
I
opinion.
agree. I do think so, but that's not anyone's.
But that doesn't mean like, yeah, like being a
It has
first
nothing to
ballot
do with
Hall
his
of Famer
numbers. It's
doesn't
just they
mean
were
like,
like
oh,
he's
you're not
mean or
top three all
whatever.
time in your position, therefore you're not allowed to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's
No.
idiotic.
So I don't know. I think Evans deserves the first ballot Hall of Fame thing. Like it just because by when it's all said and done, like NFL all-time career receiving yards list, where does he fall? I definitely went too far. Hold on. Did I
Well, he
miss
has
him? Oh, I missed him. He's top. He's
12,429
24th.
yards.
He's 24th all time. By the time his career's over, I mean, he finishes out 1,000. He'll have what, like 12,600? Is that what it is, or 500? About 12,500 yards. Like we're very realistically looking like if he plays 2 more seasons, he's going to be in the top 10 all time in receiving yards. You know, I'm thinking that's a first ballot Hall of Famer, man. It's not like because it's not like quarterback stats where like you're just going to get a whole new wave of all the new quarterbacks are going to occupy the top passing yard stats because it's you know
a different
a
game.
different league. Yeah, because all these receivers at the top there, like even in non-passing eras, like they were just simply the only players getting when they were throwing. It was only going to like Tim Brown, for example, which has him at 7th all time in receiving yards. Like we're looking at Mike Evans if he plays like 3 more seasons, that he's 4th. He might like I don't think it's far fetched that he's going to catch like Randy Moss all time in receiving yards. You'll have to see when you know when it's all said and done his career, and it'll be because you're right. He was never the best receiver in football. He was never a top 3 receiver in football. Maybe only a few times was a top 5 receiver in football. But there's something to I think really be appreciated for being just so good and very very solid every single year. Just chugging along. I'm healthy. I'm getting 1,200 yards like it's my job, and I'm cashing my checks as it goes. I won a Super Bowl. Thanks, Tom. Great career, honestly. Good for him. But back to the game. I'm taking Tampa -4. Cowboys. They've been playing better as of late, but I think the tank's got to kick back on for a second, and I think it
There is
has.
no tank because the Cowboys are stupid.
Well,
Um,
there's also that.
I think I like the Cowboys. I think I kind of feel like though that Todd Bowles, like his entire coaching career is just based off of beating the Eagles. Outside of beating the
Wow.
Eagles, he sucks.
Yeah, Todd Bowles is just not that good of a coach. He's very middle of the road.
Like basically his entire NFL coaching career with the Buccaneers consists of him is like Jalen Hurts sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Like every quarterback just has a team they can't perform well against. Unfortunately, for Lamar has the Steelers, Burrow has the
Cleveland,
the Browns, Josh Allen has I don't know,
Baltimore, really.
Baltimore apparently.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Jalen's is
Tampa.
Tampa Bay, and so
Yeah,
everyone's like, oh, see, that's the thing. It's like beating the Eagles makes you relevant. Look at or shitting on the Eagles is just makes
yeah,
you relevant. Look at
yeah.
all these, clipboard
So you're
bullshit talking
taking
about the Eagles.
Dallas.
Anyway,
All right, next game,
yeah.
Monday night, Saints Packers.
Wow,
This
14
used to mean
points.
something. 14-point spread.
It did.
I'm taking Green Bay in a game where they get up early, they get up a few scores early, and
You don't think the Saints
then
are
they just.
feisty?
Oh my god! Sorry, I'm looking out the window. The wind is whistling and the snow is like swirling. That was something. Do I think the Saints are feisty? Hmm. Not
No,
in the
Alvin
cold.
Kamara.
Not in the cold. No Kamara.
I
It's
mean, the
gonna be
Commanders almost blew that game, Michael, last week.
it was in the dome. Not in the cold, man. I don't think they can handle it.
Yeah,
I'm taking Green Bay.
it is Toyotathon, Jordan Love.
Wow. Wow.
We're rocking with that
December
angle.
Love is very good. So, all right, we're taking Green
We're
Bay.
gonna go with the Packers. Well,
And that leaves us,
Matt LaFleur at home in December
it's very good.
is very
That
good.
leaves us with the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the road, the Washington Commanders. The Commanders, 3.5 point underdogs to the Philadelphia. And,
I wonder how many Eagles fans are going to be at that game still.
oh, a ton of Eagles fans are going to be at this game. I think it's going to be just as normal as it usually is. It's been like this all year. The Commanders fans are getting outweighed by road teams because no one expected them to be good. So they all sold their tickets before the season started and are now, this is what you get. So the Eagles are the best team in the league. And I think it's a pretty decent margin at this point. I think you look at all the other contenders in football, and they all have pretty big fatal flaws that the Eagles just don't really have at the moment. The Detroit Lions are extremely injured, and thus their defense is pretty incompetent as a result. The Buffalo Bills also, their defense is just not that great. It can't hold up well against an elite offense. The Baltimore Ravens defense, thus, despite playing better, still has issues, and they have issues just as a team finishing games, closing games out. Kansas City still yet to score 30 points in a game, more than 30 points in a game. No, 30 points at all. Haven't scored 30 all season. Their offense has its own problems, finishing drives, scoring touchdowns instead of field goals, that whole thing. The Vikings, like, how much can you trust Sam Darnold to win 3 playoff games in a row? Like, it's just all those teams got serious, legitimate issues. And you look at the
It's very
Eagles,
wide open. You're correct.
and the way to beat the Eagles at this point, you need 3 things to happen. And they honestly, all 3 of them need to happen because if only one of them or only 2 of them happens, I just think there's enough of a backbone to kind of cover up the mistakes. So you need to slow down the run game as much as possible. That's holding Saquon Barkley to like less than 80 yards on the ground, maybe 90. Just really selling out to stop the run game. You need Jalen Hurts to give you at least 2 turnovers. You need multiple turnovers from Jalen Hurts. And if both of those things happen, the final thing that you would need to happen in order to, I think, beat the Eagles is you would need the defense to simply just play poorly. You would need the defense to play in a way that they have not played since the Phillies were playing regular season baseball, since September 29th in Tampa Bay, with no Cooper DeJean, and the offense was in complete hospital disarray. Like, I really think if not all of those 3 things happen, the Eagles should really win just about every time that they need to when it matters most. You're just because if the Eagles' passing offense is slow, you got to stop Saquon Barkley from rushing for 150 on you, and that's just not a very easy thing to do. You sell out to stop Barkley like the Steelers did, you're giving A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith one-on-one all day, and they're going to cook you exactly like they did against the Steelers. And even if you manage to do both of those things pretty decently, like Carolina did, I guess, the Eagles defense only gave up 16 points. Like, you got to bank on their defense just not playing well, which they haven't done in so long. And also, Reed Blankenship wasn't playing in that game. There was a lot of busted coverages on the back end because the biggest communicator, safety, wasn't on the field. Like, not to say that, they're going to blow everybody out, because I think it's different than when in 2022 when they were able to blow out the Giants and blow out the 49ers, because I do think the NFC is much better than that. I think all those NFC teams are capable of winning against the Eagles. I just think that it is going to take a real perfect storm for the Eagles to get knocked off this time around.
Actually, I think the Eagles, like you said, the closest they have to a fatal flaw. And man, this is just my take, and it's just because we've seen it. I think it's going to be just like offensive coaching decisions. Um, when the Eagles played Carolina, Michael, on their first drive, they were targeting like Jahan Dotson a lot.
Hmm.
They were like focused on getting Calcaterra more like not
Getting other guys involved.
not the stars, right?
Yeah.
And that's just like, and I know like we like to blame Nick Sirianni for every issue and never want to blame the assistant coaches. But that's just like been Kellen Moore's big issue his whole coaching career. It goes back to Dallas when like I'd watch games where like when Dak was throwing picks, it was like them forcing the ball to Noah Brown or like Jake Ferguson before he became good, or like whoever like Turpin, not getting the stars involved, you know. And if they're just going to go into a playoff game, like, oh, we need to get John Dotson involved, and then Jalen throws like a pick six, kind of to what you just said, like it's going to be like, like you saw, like AJ Brown was frustrated with the passing game, not because he wasn't getting the ball necessarily. It was because it's like,
It was stuck in its own way.
it
It
was
wasn't.
like, it's like we're getting open, but we need to get, like, he didn't say outwards like AJ, what's the problem with the Eagles offense? He's like, Jahan Dotson blows.
No, like it's there's a difference with AJ's like, AJ wasn't complaining for the ball, no, but he was complaining about the offense like we're not doing the easy stuff. We're not doing the easy stuff right. We're not Jalen's not pulling the trigger on the quick slant patterns that me and Devontae Smith are open on. We're not running those enough. So like we want to talk about why, the offense gets is slow starts or whatever. And like you said, we're focused on getting Grant Calcaterra and Jahan Dotson involved.
Or
If
Johnny
you just
Wilson.
Yeah, if you just come out from the get-go and you're like, we want to get Jalen, we want to get AJ Brown, and we want to get Devonta Smith going early, you're probably getting points on the drive. You're simply probably going to score a mix of, okay, Barkley's going to get some touches, and when we throw it, we're targeting on our slants, AJ and Devonta Smith on a quick out. You're going to probably get points. Granted, the Eagles, like I said they were going to do, they they pander, they flex like, all right, they relax the fans. They do it every week. They didn't run under center, they started running under center. They didn't use a fullback, started using the fullback. They didn't run the ball, they started running the ball. They had issues with the passing game. What did they do? They came out in 5 wide and threw it 20-yard pass to Grant Calcaterra to open up the game on a beautiful stick and nod. They were forcing the ball, not forcing it, they were throwing the ball to AJ and to Smitty, and they were getting nice chunks, run after the catch, all this sort of hitting the slant patterns on the go. It's why it drives me insane when people say Jalen Hurts isn't a good pocket passer. That's actually where he's at his best. He is at his best a pocket pass, like in the pocket is when he's at his best, on rhythm, in time, like all that sort of stuff. And you saw it against Pittsburgh. They were running single high to sell out the run, and you're just easy pickings with AJ Brown killing his man one on one on a slant pattern. Jalen perfectly placing, perfectly timed back shoulder ball to him. It's like, I'm not saying, just ignore Jahan Dotson, but like, there's no reason that you're like, okay, we want to get him a couple looks here early to get his like feet wet in the game. Like, no, I want to go get the ball to AJ Brown, Devonta Smith early so I can go score points. If I got to throw it to Jahan Dotson, I'll trust that Jahan Dotson's going to make a play when I need him to, like against Jacksonville when he made that ridiculous circus catch. That's great. Or was it against Washington? I forget. Whatever it was. That's when
Dallas.
I'll deal with it. Was it Dallas?
I think
No,
it
they
was
didn't play
Dallas.
Dallas at home. It was a home game.
Oh, that was Jahan Dotson. That was the Commanders. He had that really good catch against the
It
Cowboys.
was like, yes. But it's like, I will take my chances later in a game, if I desperately need it. But I want to score. I don't want to start out with 2 punts and then, okay, time for us to run our normal offense. I want to come out and hit AJ Brown early. Like you look at the Ravens game where the Eagles offense was brutal their first 2 drives. And then their offense started moving the ball in the third quarter because AJ Brown was getting targeted on inbreakers and on slants. And it's like, you could easily do this from the start of the game and things are going to be fine. And it's what they did against Pittsburgh. And they had their best passing day of the entire season. they have all the answers to be successful. They truly do. You run the ball as normal. You target your stars in easy ways, easy for the receivers to get open, easy for the quarterback to hit the passes. Teams are very, very unlikely going to stop that and slow that down if you just press the easy buttons consistently. And you can trust that your defense will be able to get stops when they need to, will be
Yeah,
able to
that's the
make
big
plays when
difference
they need
between
to.
this team and the 2022 Eagles is that that defense was like they would ball out against bad teams.
That defense would create pressure. That defense would get sacks and just like they would sack. They broke the sack record for a team. Like they killed. They would kill drives by getting a big sack. Hassan, it's like only a matter of time before Hassan Reddick breaks through and he gets a
But the problem
game-stealing
was like you
sack,
also get the vibe too if like 3rd and 12 they give up a first down.
unless they got a sack. Like that's
Unless
what it
yes,
was.
they were
Yeah,
sack
exactly.
dependent. This
Yes,
team is not
sack
sack
dependent.
dependent.
I don't know, it's so ridiculous to be like, if we
They
don't get a
were. They
sack,
were
if we
sack
don't get a
dependent.
sack, we are
You saw
effed.
in the
I mean, like
Super Bowl, they didn't get a sack. What happened? Mahomes
the
diced them
field.
up.
It was the field, John. God,
They
I
got
I honestly
diced
I
up
will.
like crazy.
We did, and it's because we played on frickin' ice. I will never forgive that. That was disgusting. You play that. You could play that game on concrete. You could play that game in. You could have played the Super Bowl in Arrowhead, and the Eagles would have won by 2 possessions. I
The
shit you
Super
not.
Bowl's in New Orleans. Where do they play on turf?
Yeah, but it's not. I don't think they're rolling in some fugazi turf like they were in Arizona.
They're gonna play on
The
a run.
Sod
They're
Father. The
basically they're
Sod
basically
Father can rot in hell. Honestly, that guy is disgusting. What he did. Oh, he cooked up some new grass variant. Get the what lab was that 90-year-old man cooking in? Are you kidding me? What a joke. Anyways, yes, they were sack dependent. Now their defense from
cracking me
top to
up, dude.
bottom is elite. They have an elite secondary with not just Quinyon Mitchell being incredible, but Darius Slay has been unbelievable. He's got a top 5 like completion percentage against in all of football. It's the lowest mark of his entire career. CJ Gardner Johnson, if he's terrible at one thing, it's coverage in the red zone. He can't handle it at
He's
all.
too small.
He's too small and he's always late. But everywhere else, he's not afraid to hit. He makes big plays. He makes big plays in the run game as well. Reed Blankenship is the perfect pair safety to go along with that. They truly have the best linebacker duo in football, which is just mind-boggling insane. Did not expect that. No one did. Zach Bond's been the best, arguably best defensive player in the sport this year.
It
And
really doesn't.
Kobe Dean,
It's really not helping taking like non-edge linebackers in the first round when the Eagles just aggregated a linebacker.
they did, but then they turned it into like, I mean, they took a failed edge rusher and turned him into the best off-ball linebacker in the league. That's just remarkable. And then the D line just wreaks havoc, man. Like you haven't really felt Brandon Graham being out yet, which is awesome. That's a huge testament to how good Jalix Hunt has been and how good Nolan Smith has become. And you're going to get Bryce Huff back, who was actually winning his pass rush reps before he got hurt, but now he's fully healthy. So he should, in theory, get even better. Jordan Davis plays limited snaps because they do in their 5-man front. When they run the 5-man front with Jordan Davis, I think it was 13 snaps, and the Steelers ran the ball 11 times, and it was like a net gain of like 2 yards or something ridiculous. Like just
Yeah, watching that game was like
Jalen Carter wrecks the
Arthur
game.
Smith,
Like,
if you're like Arthur Smith and some college team of note offers you a job, like you need to run and take it because like that was literally I think watching that Steeler offense, Michael, it was one of the most predictable offenses I've watched all season. Like it's
yeah,
like when Najee's in the game, they're clearly running. And then when
yeah.
Jalen Warren's in the game, they're just clearly going to pass. So the
And when you don't have
Eagles,
George Pickens, it's just so easy to,
of
you know,
course,
yeah. It was just it was dominant. It was one of the most dominant games I've ever watched. I've ever been a part of for a game that still only finished as a 14-point game. I mean, a 21 play, 85-yard, 10-minute and 40-second drive to just put the game away is genuinely unheard of. Like that, it's been since 2009 where a team has only had 2 drives in the second half, and the Eagles did it Sunday. I thought it was very stupid that on 4th and 7 or 4th and 8 that Mike Tomlin decided to punt, give the Eagles the ball back in that spot. They were down 2 possessions. I felt that you couldn't afford to give them the ball back. Did I expect,
Let
the Eagles
let
are just
Russ
going to
try to
end the game?
let Russ try to get you back in the game. He's your
Well,
guy now.
it was what, 3rd and 22, and they got, you know, uh, what is that math? They got 15 yards on 3rd and 22 to make it 4th and 7. What did you need? You needed 17 yards to feel good about going for it on 4th down? Like, I don't, Jesus Christ, what more do you want on 3rd and 22 to get yourself in a 4th and manageable? It didn't really make sense to me. Did I think the Eagles were going to put the game away? Like, yeah, not give the ball back, but I thought they'd kill some clock. And then they killed the entire game. It just perfect. It was about as a completive game as the Eagles have had in some time, where there
If
was
it was the
truly
Lions,
no
they
notes.
would try to run the score up.
There was no notes. They could have ran the score up if they wanted to, but they didn't. No notes. It was perfect, and I think it continues. Like, the Eagles view the Commanders as, like, Jordan Mailata said it. He goes, the goal is bigger than the division, and that doesn't mean they're like, oh, we're taking this easy. That means, like, we are a freight train. We are steamrolling everything in our way, and the Commanders are just another bump in the road that we are going to roll over like it's not even there. And I think I'd be floored to see the Eagles not come out on top and clinch the NFC East tomorrow. I'm taking the -3.5, and I think we're going to
Oh, I
see
forgot to
another
slow down
very
and
good
pick the game.
performance. Yes, yes.
I'm taking the Commanders.
Oh, come on. That blows, man.
I think though. I think Michael. There's one person that we just not have talked about at all, and I think he's going to play a very major role in tomorrow's game in a positive way. Positive way. I think it's Jake Elliott. Like you need Jake Elliott to like whatever if he's. I hope it's not an injury because then he probably should not be out there, right?
No, I don't think he's hurt.
If
I
this
just
is
think
like
it
a
was a
confidence issue, like dude, like it would be just like you need him to start making clutch kicks. Like you want to get into a situation where you're trying to kill the clock and you're up by 7 and you're like, I need Jake to make this 53-yard field goal to make it a 2 possession game and put this game
you
like
don't want to have to feel like it's a decision on 4th and 8 from, like you said, a
because it was
53-yard
against the
field.
Panthers. Don't
It
forget it.
was.
It
It
was a
was
decision against the Panthers.
that they decided to punt. And
Yes.
listen, they pinned them. The defense, but they
They
closed
got
the
kind of
door.
got screwed on that last drive. They got like the Panthers got away with like 4 holding calls.
They did.
Which now it
But
just feels like the norm now where the NFL's
Voodoo came
the
back
refs
around with a
can
drop
dictate
touchdown.
the game at that point, right?
No, totally. They really do. But no, you're right. So what? You're on a Jake Elliott game-winning field goal vibe.
I think
That's
it's
where
going to
you're
be
at.
a tie game. It's going to be a tie game. Hurts drives him down
He's got to make like a 49-yarder to
on that
win.
slop of a field. He's got to make like a 50-yarder. He hasn't made a 50-yarder all season. The announcers are going to be like, Jake Elliott is 0 for 7 on 50-yard field goals this year. And then he bangs it right down the middle.
It's Joe Davis too. He'll give a good call for that.
Eagles
For
win.
the division.
Eagles win. Yeah, he's going to be for the division.
Yeah, it's gonna be
Yes.
great.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen. That is what's going to
Listen,
happen tomorrow, Michael.
I don't hate it, but like I also want to beat the shit out of them. So,
I mean, I would love to just beat the snot out of them and just shut them up.
but
Because they
that
really
would be.
are like, it's funny. Philadelphia's always
They're
been like
fleas, man. They're literal fleas.
well, like the Philadelphia has always been the little brother to like New York and Boston, and
Yes.
now like Washington
We have our own little brother.
is our little brother. That is what they
DC.
are.
They do
Yeah,
have more
so,
championships than us in the last
yeah. Well, I don't want to talk about that.
15 years.
No, I don't want to talk about
I
it.
can't believe the Nationals won the World Series. It's
Yeah.
one of the worst
Well,
things.
on that
That's one of the
note, we're
worst
ending
things
this
that have
show.
ever happened. That is actually one of the worst things that have ever happened. I don't think people here acknowledge it enough because it's the Nationals and who cares? I care. Why do they get to deserve that? That's unbelievable.
I mean, I grew up with watching them as the Expos, and they were
Expos, yeah.
always just bad.
They
They
were
were always
bad my
bad.
entire childhood, and then well, that's not true. They were bad my early childhood, and then, like, my formative years where, like, I was really fully aware of what was going on, they were just better, and that was so annoying to me. That sucked, and then they won the World Series, like, what the fuck? But anyways, that's our
On
show,
that note,
everybody.
that's the show, everybody. Take care.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great weekend of football.
Yeah, great sports.
We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Pod, Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Philly Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on Fired Up Sports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.